Chapter 681. When Smith saw Lu Qing also noticed him. Slightly surprised, Lu Qing greeted him, "I didn't expect to see you here." Spider was transferred to the war-torn zones. And he was dressed like a dog. Smith's lips twitched, and he smiled bitterly. Lu, I should be the one saying that. He had crossed the ocean and entered the war-torn zones. How could he be related to this troublemaker? Lu Qing chuckled when he heard the resentment in Smith's voice. In China, we call this fate. My Chinese teacher told me that there's a type of fate called ill-fated, Smith muttered. Spider, you have a talent for crosstalk too. Lu Qing was at a loss for words, not knowing how to respond. Since the Joint Command headquarters was a public place, it was best not to show too good of a relationship. Otherwise, people might think that something was amiss with the surveillance. He didn't say anything else and just nodded. After the small talk, he was introduced to the American higher-ups and the Special Forces members who would be working with him later. Who is he? Duane looked at Lu Cheng's back and asked Smith in a low voice. Judging from the way he was surrounded, he must be of high status. You don't know? Smith asked in surprise. Duane's dark face reddened slightly as he rubbed his hands together in embarrassment. I've been in the war-torn zones for 3 years. The information I receive from the outside world is filtered. Smith pondered for a few seconds. To put it simply, he's a newly promoted terror grade expert. Terror grade. Duane gasped. The higher-ups don't seem too optimistic about this mission. He was full of confidence, but now he couldn't help but feel nervous. But I don't think we have any terror grade experts here. Smith calmed down and noticed something that didn't make sense. Indeed. China's judgment of missions is different from ours. They're always too cautious. Duane nodded thoughtfully, his heart slowly calming down. He trusted his comrade of 3 years even more. This was the reason why he was able to survive until now. Without waiting for Smith to speak, he smiled. Do you know him? He went to Connecticut before. I was in charge of surveillance. He was only a danger grade expert, so we communicated, Smith answered frankly. That means you're friends. Smith, you should be happy. If anything happens, he'll definitely choose to save those he's familiar with first. You'll be very safe. Duane said, half in awe and half in envy. Logically speaking, that's not wrong. The corner of Smith's mouth twitched. But you have to know that Lu is a troublemaker. Whether it's intentional or not, he's always surrounded by situations. Things that weren't that big of a deal often develop into a disaster. Just thinking about it. Although there were some things that he was happy to see happen and even took the initiative to participate in, it still proved Lu's ability to cause trouble. Well, in Chinese, it was the ability to cause trouble. What is the Hua Nation military thinking? Duane was shocked again. In the world of supernatural abilities, lowering the coefficient of misfortune and increasing the coefficient of luck was a necessary preparation before every operation. Who knows? At this point, he suddenly froze and asked with a frown, Buddy, what did you just say? People like him should be excluded from all operations. Duane was baffled. The first sentence, Smith said in a deep voice. Duane thought for a few seconds. You'll be very safe. If anything happens, he'll definitely choose to save those he's familiar with first. What are you trying to ask? You mean, I'll go with him? Smith couldn't help but raise his voice. Duane looked at him sympathetically. You don't know. You've been included in the list of people working with the Chinese. Smith's calmed heart was in turmoil again. He almost blurted out a curse, but in the end, it turned into a long "oh." After visiting the Joint Command Center, Lu Qing received the plan for Operation Dawn. It was divided into 3 steps. First, they would use the preset field airfields to bombard Ta Gu and his gang's territory and destroy their effective defenses. After the bombardment ended, the Special Operations Forces would take advantage of the chaos to break in and execute the decapitation strategy. They would try to capture or kill Ta Gu and the other main leaders and disrupt their command. After the decapitation strategy, the ground forces would close the net and clean up the rest. Such a battle plan was straightforward and easy to understand, which corresponded to the simplicity of the mission. As for Lu Qing, he was only required to participate in the second step, which was to prevent accidents, as an assistant. In a 3-story building hidden by the mountains, Ta Gu, who had dark skin and a thin body, fell into a long silence as he rubbed the jade ring on his thumb. He was a mixed blood of Miluo and Xinjiang. He had made a name for himself in the war-torn zones with his courage and fearlessness, becoming a warlord and an internationally renowned drug lord. If not for his injuries and lack of timely treatment, he would have been at the inhuman level. Have you made up your mind? Beside Ta Gu, in addition to his 2 trusted mighty ones, sat an old man in a black jacket. He had a sallow face, dark eyes, and a dangerous aura. Ta Gu's lips quivered a few times. What are you guys trying to do? Why are you trying to rope me in? The old man with thin, silvery white hair seemed to have been frozen for a long time. He replied expressionlessly. You can think of it that way. The war-torn zones, the war-torn zones they're talking about, have a number of mighty ones of physical invulnerability secretly forming an alliance. Some were born and raised locally, while others have betrayed their original countries and want to stay here for a long time. Our goal is to make the war-torn zones truly belong to the war-torn zones. We will bring order back to the land. Of course, the prerequisite is that we are the rulers. You have ample funds and external trade channels. These are all what we need. That's why I'm here to help you and bring you out of danger, as long as you agree to submit to me. After hearing that, Ta Gu fell silent again. Countless thoughts were running through his mind, but he couldn't make up his mind. Just then, a deep and loud buzzing sound came from afar. It gradually grew sharper, followed by a series of terrifying explosions. Boom! 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 As the building shook, Ta Gu stood up abruptly with a look of fear. In an instant, he made up his mind. He looked at the old man and said, I promise you. His wife and confidants had already packed their luggage. The chains that hadn't been fully tightened flashed with the glow of gold and guns. After the blanket bombardment, the special forces passed through the smoke and flames and entered the core area of Ta Gu's faction. They split into small teams and headed for different targets. Lu Qing was undoubtedly in the team heading for Ta Gu's residence. The team consisted of former Spider-Man Smith, Storm Giant Dwayne, Shadow Hunter Qing'an, and Thoughtless Blade Jian Dan. Along the way, they didn't waste any time. Occasionally, they would encounter a few enemies. They were either entangled with spider webs or shot randomly with invisible air blades. Without stopping, they arrived at the 3-story building and saw the scene of burning flames. Ta Gu escaped. Qing'an sniffed and found a clue from the shadows. He didn't hesitate at all. He fled and gave up just like that. No wonder he's a hero, said Jian Dan as she looked around. After careful inspection, Qing'an said, they have a lot of people. There are quite a few of them, so they aren't moving fast. Storm Giant Dwayne immediately said, after them. The few of them set off again. They followed the path, climbed over the hills, and entered a moist forest. As they chased, Smith, Qing'an, and the others suddenly heard a dense, soft sound that made their scalps tingle. They looked around and saw countless insects, colorful snakes, flying, dark clouds, and little things that resembled fine sand. Smith even made eye contact with a spider with a human face on its back. One by one, hundreds and thousands of creepy spiders entered his eyes, making him shudder. The insects that could drown a group of people were just about to move when they suddenly paused. Due to the sudden drop in temperature, droplets of water condensed, and layers of ice crystals covered them, forming statues. At that moment, Smith heard Lu Qing whisper to himself. "This is beyond the means of an inhuman. Is there really an accident?" Smith was silent at first. Then, the corner of his mouth twitched as he thought to himself, "You have the nerve to say that." Chapter 682. The cold wind whistled, blowing in the tropical jungle, causing the trees to form strings of frost. Icicles made the surroundings sparkling and translucent, freezing all kinds of strange and endless insects. These weren't sturdy. Larger creatures like snakes and spiders could easily break free. However, they were afraid of the cold. As soon as they recovered, they retreated like the receding tide, leaving the area within a radius of 20 to 30 meters completely silent. Lu Qing sensed his surroundings and turned to Shadow Hunter Qing and requested, to communicate with the Alliance Command Center. "Tell them that Ta Gu's group seems to have the help of a physical invulnerability expert. Ask them what to do next." He had wanted to request air support, reconnaissance, and bombardment. However, when he looked up and saw the dense foliage and scattered light of dawn, he changed his mind. "Yes." Qing'an took out his satellite phone from his backpack and reported the situation to the Alliance Command Center. After a short discussion, a new order was issued. Continue the pursuit. If there is danger, leave on your own accord. Their primary goal changed from capturing Ta Gu to confirming the identity of the physical invulnerability expert and investigating which faction was involved. "Then let's continue." Lu Qing took in a breath of the forest air mixed with the smell of rotting leaves. For the time being, he didn't sense any strong danger. "Continue." Smith's mouth opened helplessly. He shot out spider silk from his palm and wrapped it around a huge tree branch. Using this pole, he leapt into the air and landed on a high tree. Through the gaps between the leaves, he observed the path ahead and played the role of a responsible scout. There are no enemies within a radius of 300 meters. Smith concluded. In the forest, with his eyesight, this was the best he could do, even from a high vantage point. Lu Qing watched with interest as the spider became more and more professional. Under Chang'an's guidance, the spider sped up the pursuit. At a place not too far away, Ta Gu's face was gloomy as he followed the sallow-faced old man in a short black coat. He ran straight and turned at times. Due to the presence of non-combatants, even if they were carried by their trusted subordinates, the team's speed was greatly reduced. This made Ta Gu very uneasy. His gaze swept across his wives and young children. Gradually, a fierce look flashed in his eyes. Just then, he saw the old man with thin, silvery white hair suddenly stop in his tracks. He turned his head in surprise and looked diagonally behind him. "What's wrong, Mr. Talon?" Ta Gu asked in shock. The old man Talon's already stiff face became even more rigid as he replied in a slightly heavy tone. "The setup I left behind was dealt with in less than 5 seconds. We're in trouble. Is he at physical invulnerability level?" Ta Gu swallowed his saliva and asked with difficulty. The expressions of the capable subordinates who were still following him all changed. His sphere of influence was close to Hua Nation, and he was used to using Hua Nation's ranking as a standard. Talon took a deep breath and said, "I think so. I didn't expect China and America to value you so much that they would send a physical invulnerability expert here. This was beyond the expectations of the organization." Eliminating small forces like Ta Gu was a one-sided affair for both China and the United States of America, but they shouldn't make such a big deal out of it. If they had to trouble a physical invulnerability expert for something like this, it could only mean that the military had wasted their budget. In order to not expose the secret of the secret alliance, he was the only one in charge of the first half of the operation. This Tagu's expression darkened. No matter how hard he racked his brains, he couldn't understand why China and the United States of America valued him so much. How could he be worthy of a physical invulnerability expert? Mr. Talon, what should we do? Tagu took a deep breath and stopped thinking about the reason. It had nothing to do with changing the current situation. Talon pondered for a moment and said, let's see if we can confuse them. As long as we can get out of the forest and reach the border, we'll have reinforcements. As he spoke, green and milky white furry bugs crawled out from the ground beneath his feet. They merged with the demonic spiders and colorful snakes that came from all around, forming a torrent. These creatures crawled towards Tagu, towards his wife and children, and towards his trusted subordinates who had extraordinary strength. Their scalps went numb. As they resisted instinctively, Talon spoke in a deep voice. Don't be afraid. They won't hurt you. Suppressing the fear and the goosebumps, these insects crawled past every human present outside the Talon forest. With different pheromones, they spread out in all directions, heading to the north, south, east, and west. Let's go. Talon stroked his dry white hair and led the way to the southeast. Tagu suppressed his impulses and decided to hold on to hope one more time. If it didn't work, he would give up on everything else. As long as he was alive, what couldn't he have? After tracking for a while, Shadow Hunter Chingen suddenly stopped. Did you find anything? Lu Qing looked around and saw many traces, all of which pointed to different directions. Tagu and his group seemed to have split up. Chingen replied hesitantly as he used his supernatural ability to detect the shadows. This split was very strange because there were more or less the same aura, in several directions. Smith slid down from the tree, sniffled, and frowned. He frowned and said, I smell spiders. Here, he was very sensitive to such things. It was his instinct. Looks like they're using bugs. Storm Giant Dwayne had a deep impression of the scenery. He had experience in jungle battles, so he joined in the search for tracks and provided suggestions. With the help of Smith and the others, Chingen finally identified the truth. He led the team and continued the chase. Tagu and his group shuttled through the jungle in a hurry. No one spoke. The atmosphere was tense. It seemed like the situation would crumble at any moment. After a few minutes, Talon paused again. Everyone's hearts were in their throats. They've caught up. Tagu guessed the worst. They probably have the most professional trackers. Talon's stiff face twitched. They're very close to us. Tagu glanced at his wife and subordinates from the corner of his eye. He asked in a deep voice, is there a way to escape? If I'm the only one with them, is there a chance of escaping? Talon was silent for a moment. Then, he said solemnly, we have to strike back and set up an ambush to deal them a heavy blow. That will make things easier. If they were to just escape, he might not be able to outrun the enemy since he wasn't known for his speed. The enemy could very well only have subordinates who were good at tracking. They might as well take advantage of Tagu's capable subordinates and give it a try. Are you confident? Tagu narrowed his eyes. He no longer cared about his pride as a physical invulnerability mighty one. Talon looked back and replied with a hoarse voice, setting traps and traps. I'm very good at it. As for the best results, that will depend on whether you guys are willing to give it your all. That's what I'm good at. Tagu said through gritted teeth. The unique scenery of this place retreated as the trees swept past them. As Smith gradually got used to the atmosphere, he suddenly saw Lu Qing stop in his tracks and extend his arm to stop the group. There's a problem up ahead, Lu Qing said as he looked at the jungle dozens of meters ahead. Thump. Smith could hear his own heartbeat. He almost turned tail and ran. A problem. Chingen, the shadow hunter, looked around and asked in confusion. He didn't detect any danger. The insects and birds were still active, and the shadows there were extremely normal. I smell danger. Lu Cheng's lips curled into a smile. He didn't attempt to find the enemy, identify the traps, or do any delicate work. Instead, he condensed a violent, crimson fireball around him. After the crimson was a faint purple, a light blue, a blazing white, and a golden yellow. Lu Cheng was surrounded by the symbol of the gods. Whoosh! 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 He didn't say a word. Instead, he fired the 5 flames one after another to saturate the area. During this process, he adjusted the frequency so that the speed at which he condensed the fireball could keep up with the speed at which he fired it. Boom! 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 Clouds of black dust rose up one after another. Trees were either broken or broken one after another. Deep craters appeared one after another. Different colored fireworks bloomed one after another. In less than a minute, the jungle was cleared. As for the traps, what were they? Cough! 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 Talon, Ta Gu, and the rest retreated pathetically, exposing themselves. In that short period of time, they felt like they were being plowed by an artillery team. Chapter 683. As soon as Ta Gu and the rest appeared, Lu Cheng's gaze locked onto the sallow-faced old man in a black short-sleeved shirt. The aura of an expert told him clearly that this was a strong opponent of physical invulnerability. What made him even more certain was that he wasn't in the photos of Ta Gu and his gang that the Joint Command Headquarters showed to the Special Ops members. As these thoughts flashed through his mind, the faint purple fireball around Lu Cheng whizzed past Talon and Ta Gu, landing in the direction they were trying to escape. At the same time, he gave Shadow Hunter Chingen a look, telling him to follow the predetermined procedure. Chingen got the hint. He opened the side pocket of his tactical backpack and took out a small professional camera. According to the Joint Command Headquarters instructions, they had to record the enemy and leave behind reliable information for later identification. After all, Lu Cheng couldn't guarantee that they could capture a physical invulnerability expert. At this level, it was easier to win than to kill a physical invulnerability expert if they didn't gang up on him. Capturing him alive was almost impossible. Boom! Purple flames rose into the air, and dust turned into clouds. The terrifying explosion made Ta Gu and the rest stop abruptly and turn around. The blossoming light overshadowed the morning sun that had lost its cover. It illuminated Talon's appearance extremely clearly, revealing every hair on her body. Snap! Just as the light receded and the flames were still flickering, a sudden flash of light entered Talon's eyes. His pupils shrank slightly as he saw the skinny enemy holding the camera. I've been photographed. A similar realization flashed through Talon's mind, and a strong murderous intent surged. As a physical invulnerability expert, he was well known in the war-torn zones and even in the intelligence agencies of the entire world. Even if he disguised himself slightly, he would still be exposed. This way, China and America would be able to determine who was interfering with their operations and who was harboring ill intentions towards them. Although this could be explained as his personal actions and cover up the existence and true motives of the organization, it was still easy to leave behind problems. As long as they had their eyes on him and were on their guard, it was inevitable that they would investigate the mighty one who was on good terms with him. During this process, no matter who it was, the slightest carelessness could lead to the appearance of a secret alliance plotting against the master. This would lead to more specific suspicions. With the power of China and the United States, at this point, it would be difficult for paper to contain the flames. Therefore, the best solution was to kill the tracker and destroy the camera, not letting a single witness return. However, Talon's murderous intent was immediately doused with cold water. He hurriedly pulled Ta Gu and dashed 30 to 40 meters to the left. Boom! Boom! Where the two of them were originally standing, light blue and blazing white flames surged and expanded. The flames ignited the broken wood and left a deep charred crater. PFFF. One of Tagu's trusted subordinates, who only had time to jump to the side, was hit by the air blast and burned by the flames. He couldn't help but spit out blood. He fell to the ground and writhed in agony. It was obvious that he was not going to survive. If it wasn't for the fact that his strength was pretty good and that he had been tempered for a long time, it wouldn't have been strange for him to be smashed into pieces at such a distance. Talon didn't dare to stop. Pulling Tagu along, he kept turning and changing positions. He tried to break through the encirclement a few times, but each time, he was blocked by the cannon fire. At this time, he also clearly saw the appearance of the leading enemy. His heart immediately thumped, and he felt as if something was slowly sinking down. China's Lu Qing. After forming a secret alliance and forming an organization, the most common thing they did internally was exchange information. Therefore, Talon was no stranger to physical and vulnerability experts from other sections. He quickly identified the other party. Among the descriptions of Lu Qing, there was one line that caught his attention the most. He has the supernatural ability to predict danger and reflect curses. As a physical and vulnerability expert who had reached his current level through witchcraft, he hated and feared such opponents the most. This meant that half of his innumerable strange techniques would be nullified, or even more. Of course, he knew that there was a limit to any supernatural ability. The other party might not be able to completely counter his curses. However, he didn't want to verify this conjecture unless he had no other choice. What if he was wrong? What if he was really reflected? That would be equivalent to giving up an arm and adding a leg. He might even die here. Talon was born in the war-torn zones, grew up in the war-torn zones, and was strong in the war-torn zones. He had experienced many dangerous situations. His thoughts ran wild, and he made a decision without hesitation. Run. Run as fast as possible. Run with Tagu. But before that, he had to kill Tagu's confidants, wife, and children. They had heard about the secret alliance. As for the jewels, gold, and bearer bonds, he could only give them up and see if they could distract the enemy. He would deal with the hidden dangers later. Only by staying alive could he talk about the future. Thump. Taking a step forward, Talon was like a weightless black cloud. Lifting Tagu, he deftly avoided the light blue and crimson fireballs. Just then, he saw a few strands of spider silk fly past from the corner of his eye, wrapping around a huge tree that had been snapped in half. Following that, Smith, in his American military uniform and neatly combed hair, leaped into the air. With one hand, he created a spider web to envelop Tagu's wife and children. With the other, he took a picture of Talon and recorded his side profile. I feel like a monkey being watched by a crowd. Being treated in such a manner, Talon was enraged. He suddenly shook his right hand and shot out a ball of grayish-white fog. This cloud of fog didn't move slowly like its counterparts. As soon as it formed, it pounced on Smith, forming blurry eyes, ears, mouth, and nose. It was as though it had grown a human face. Before the fog even got close, Smith felt as though he had fallen into an ice cave. His body was cold and stiff, and even his reactions were slow. An indescribable fear filled his mind. It was as though he had just witnessed the most terrifying thing in the world. His life was slipping away. At the critical moment, his vision blurred and he saw Lu Qing in his navy blue martial arts suit. He saw the faint purple fireballs hovering above and behind his head. The purple was so heavy and scorching that it distorted the air around it and absorbed the surrounding flames. It was like a true god high above, or a sun emitting endless light and heat, quietly looking down on the earth. As soon as the grayish-white fog with the human face approached, it sizzled like snow melting under the scorching sun. It seemed to let out a scream and struggled wildly. However, it was quickly enveloped by the gathering flames and disappeared without a trace. As the chill faded, Smith felt blood flowing to every corner of his body again. Ah! 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 At this time, screams drilled into his ears one after another, and extremely horrifying scenes were reflected in his eyes. Ta Gu's confidants, wives, and children were either stunned on the spot. Insects of various colors swarmed out of their eyes, noses, ears, and mouths. Their bodies turned black, and their hands madly clawed at their faces, forcefully pulling out their eyeballs. Some of their skin instantly dried up, revealing their white bones and flesh mixed with foreign objects. All of them were in a pitiful state and had died mysteriously. When the insects, snakes, and spiders were crawling over their bodies to collect their pheromones, the battle-hardened Talon had secretly prepared for the worst possible situation. Killing was a common occurrence for him, and he could always come up with new ideas. While Lu Cheng was saving Smith, Talon activated his plan. Then, with great confidence, he carried Ta Gu and ran into the depths of the forest without waiting to see the results. Whoosh! Talon exerted force with his heels and crossed the open space, avoiding Lu Cheng's golden fireball. Just as he was about to continue running, the golden fireball suddenly exploded slightly. It drew a beautiful arc in the air, forcibly changed its target, and shot back at him again. Marks appeared on Talon's calves, as though dozens of snakes had coiled around him. Poof! With the momentum behind him gone, he strangely changed directions and let the golden fireball fly into the dense forest, creating a mess. As soon as Talon moved, Lu Cheng moved as well. He threw a punch with his right fist from a few hundred meters away. Bzzz. Bzzz. Pores on his back and legs opened up, spewing out light blue flames. Bam! Like a launched rocket, Lu Cheng instantly closed the distance between them and arrived beside Talon. His fist carried powerful kinetic energy, as though it could destroy everything. Self-created unique skill, jet counterattack. If he hadn't cleared the area with the cannon fire, he wouldn't have dared to use this move. That would be knocking into trees continuously, giving his enemy a chance. In Talon's eyes, the shadow grew rapidly. It was too late for him to respond effectively. At this moment, he didn't even think as he lifted his pagoda bone and blocked the attack. Bam! Blood and flesh fell apart like rain. Broken hearts, severed intestines, deformed stomachs, and last night's supper fell to the ground with a pitter-patter. The drug lord of the generation, Ta Gu, was torn apart without a sound. Even the subsequent steps of piecing him back together could be skipped. Using Lu Cheng's momentum, Talon slid backwards at high speed. During this process, black fog rose from his body. Dense protrusions wriggled under his skin. His hair grew rapidly like vines that had lost control. His skin turned grayish-white and lost its luster. However, it gave off an unusually strong feeling. He suddenly raised his head, his eyes glowing with a ghostly green. His fingernails were like short swords, the color of gold and iron. The ends were dyed black. P.S. Happy Mid-Autumn Festival and a happy reunion. Chapter 684. In the blink of an eye, Talon seemed to have transformed into a different person. He had transformed from the Witch King of the nearby region into a monster that had crawled out from the depths of death. He was decaying yet indestructible, strange yet powerful. In a situation where curses were not effective, he chose to use the half-life, half-death technique to improve his close-range combat ability. Once transformed into the half-life, half-death technique, his body would become sturdy and his vitality would be hidden. He would no longer be afraid of ordinary attacks and would gain immense strength. He would be able to move as if he was flying, and he would carry deadly poison with him. The only problem with this evil technique was that even if he dispelled it in time, there would be traces left behind. His body would be closer to that of a corpse and his condition would be closer to death. It was irreversible. If he used it too many times and exceeded the critical point, his vitality would gradually dissipate and his body would slowly decay. He would pass away after 20 to 30 days of painful wailing. If not for the special circumstances, Talon wouldn't have considered using the half-life half-death technique. But now, he couldn't care less. Thump. He stomped on the ground with his heel and no longer slid backward. He pounced madly at Lu Qing. His green eyes flickered with fear. His hands were open but not open. He looked like he was grabbing but not grabbing. He looked twisted and ferocious. At the same time, the insects that had crawled out of the bodies of Ta Gu's wife and confidant swarmed toward Smith, Duane, Qing'an, Jian Dan, and the others like a tidal wave. They were full of flesh and blood. Their bodies swelled and were covered in a layer of violent and crazy light. They looked like unnatural products. Looking at the densely packed, strange, and colorful snakes, insects, and spiders, Smith couldn't help but shiver. His hair stood on end. He shot out spider silk with one hand and swung around with the help of the remaining trees. With the other hand, he weaved a net that covered the ground and stuck to the swarms of insects. He worked with his teammates to kill them. After 2 trips, he suddenly felt a chill on his neck. He felt something furry close to him. In that instant, Smith was scared out of his wits. He felt cold all over, as though he could see his horrifying and exaggerated death. I hope my spider body can resist the poison of these monsters. Just as this thought flashed through his mind, there was a whooshing sound, and the furry feeling disappeared. Out of instinct, Smith turned his head and looked over, only to see a weird spider with dense hair on its abdomen open. Green liquid flowed out of it, and it quickly fell down with broken threads. Then, thoughtless blade, Jian Dan retracted her right hand and pushed it forward, shooting invisible vacuum knives at the tide of insects one after another. That spider copied my fighting style, flying and sneaking attacks. Fortunately, Jane discovered it in time. Smith's heart fell back to its original position, and for a moment, he forgot who was imitating the other. He gathered his spirit, raised his awareness, and flew back and forth to assist in the battle. Jian Dan's invisible vacuum knife could not release dozens or even hundreds of them at once. In the face of countless insects, it was like pouring a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. It was hardly effective, so she simply opened her tactical backpack, took out a grenade, and threw it forward. In such a situation, she did not need to aim. As long as the direction was correct, she could kill the snakes and insects one by one. On the other side, Duane expanded his muscles, turning into a 2-meter-tall giant. On his dark skin, cloud-like patterns danced with silvery white arcs. He held a flamethrower in his toy-like hand and aimed it at the swarming insect tide. Occasionally, it would be mixed with electric sparks, jumping continuously to paralyze the insects. As a soldier known for his strength, his tactical backpack was as tall as a person. It was filled with all kinds of weapons to deal with different situations. Shadow Hunter Qing'an's supernatural ability was not suited for group attacks, so he could only wander around the edges, carrying a rocket launcher. From time to time, he would fire at the densest areas of spiders, snakes, and insects. Rumbling explosions sounded one after another. But even with their combined efforts and full firepower, the insect tide showed no signs of receding or thinning out. Some mutated insects even burrowed into the ground and attacked from the soles of their feet, forcing them to retreat as they fought. Talon's goal was to distract Lu Qing by attacking his subordinates, so that he could take care of the weak and create an opportunity to escape. There was no information to indicate that Lu Qing was a cold-hearted person. Bam! Talon pounced in front of Lu Qing, reaching out with both hands. He looked like he was going to engage in a head-on melee. He believed that an enemy with a simple, violent, direct, and tough fighting style wouldn't reject such a development. When the time came, he could give Lu Qing a surprise. If the surprise worked, and Lu Qing was distracted by his subordinates, Talon would be able to retreat easily and even reap some benefits. Seeing that both parties were about to clash, Lu Qing suddenly bent his back and dodged to the side. At the same time, he stirred up a strong gust of wind that dropped the surrounding heat by more than 10 degrees. Bam! 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 As soon as Lu Qing used his footwork, the area within a radius of dozens of meters was immediately filled with white fog and frost. Very soon, strong winds were blowing in all directions, and goose feathers were falling. A small snowstorm had started in the tropical jungle. Under the cover of the snowstorm, Lu Qing's 3 flames circled around his opponent, appearing and disappearing from time to time. It made it difficult for Talon to pinpoint his exact location, let alone exchange punches and kicks. Ice-Sek's second move, mesmerizing snow steps. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The wind whistled and blew. The ground that had been plowed by the cannon fire lost its scorching heat and became cold and harsh. Insects and other creatures were temperamental animals. They could not adjust their body temperature by themselves. In such an environment, their blood was cooling and frosting. As representatives of temperamental animals, Smith and the others would only feel cold at most for a while, but it would not affect them much. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. As the cold wind invaded their bodies and snow accumulated, the smaller insects froze to death in batches. The rest retreated like a receding tide, leaving the ground. This gave Smith, Qing'an, and the rest a chance to catch their breaths. Be it ice or fire, Lu Qing could effectively counter insect swarm. The reason why he chose the former and not the inferno was because the latter would hurt his team members regardless of whether they were friend or foe. Seeing the situation, Talon realized that he had overreached himself. He shouldn't have done 2 things at the same time. The effects of one cancelled out the other. The thought flashed through his mind. He took the opportunity to turn around and dash towards the edge of the snowstorm. It seemed like he was going to enter the forest and escape. Bam! The strong wind seemed to have slammed into a wall of air. A patch of white cracked open and Lu Qing leaped out, sticking close to Talon's back like gangrene. A crushing punch covered in purple flames landed heavily on his opponent's lumbar vertebrae. At this moment, Talon stopped abruptly, as though he had been prepared. His body seemed to have lost its bones or turned into a giant python. He twisted around forcefully and strangely, opened his palm and pressed it against Lu Qing's fist. At the center of his palm, bumps protruded. Some were green, some were blue, some were red, some were black, some were stacked with different colors, and some were like poisonous fangs. His escape this time was to counterattack. And counterattack was to make it easier for him to escape. Lu Qing's pupils shrank. He retracted his qi and blood and bent his knees. With this force concentration, he forcefully pulled back his right fist and didn't make contact with Talon's palm fangs. Talon wasn't disappointed. Instead, the green in his eyes intensified. He opened his mouth and spat out a cloud of grayish-white fog. The fog instantly condensed into a human head. Its face was blurry, but its eyes were filled with hatred. It opened its mouth and pounced at Lu Qing with lightning speed. This was the surprise Talon had prepared. It was a secret technique of the Witch King lineage, Flying Head Barbarian. It was refined from a living person with strong emotional fluctuations. Finally, it would melt the opponent's head into the fog and store it within its body. Once it was spat out, it could kill the enemy remotely from a long distance. It could come and go like the wind, gather and disperse at will, and was immune to many types of attacks. Of course, flames, ice, and high-intensity light were its nemesis. That was why Talon hadn't used it from the start. He had waited until they were less than a meter apart. At this distance, no one could avoid the bite of the flying head barbarian. Even if they didn't die, they would be severely injured. The moment the flying head barbarian appeared, Lu Qing happened to release his Dan force. Therefore, he shot backward and retreated quickly. However, the head formed from the fog was faster than him. In a breath's time, it had closed in. At this moment, a blazing white light appeared. One of the remaining 3 flames that Lu Qing hadn't blasted out had circled in front of him. He had retreated to buy this bit of time. Boom! The flying head barbarian pounced on the blazing white light. It was as though a sun had appeared on the spot. The blinding light illuminated the surroundings. The grayish-white fog twisted and struggled before quickly dissipating. With the help of the shockwave from the explosion, Talon leaped backward, straightened his body, and sprinted towards the edge of the snowstorm. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for. During this process, Talon released 3 more flying head barbarians. Each of them took up a path to block the pursuers. The snowstorm quickly thinned out. The scene of trees and forests came into view. As soon as he stepped in, before he could rejoice, a low and dignified incantation suddenly sounded in his ears. Formation. Lu Cheng's clothes were in tatters. Flames flowed on the surface of his body. His hands formed seals. At the last moment, he condensed and solidified the airflow, binding Talon in layers. If Talon hadn't been so focused on escaping, it would have been difficult for him to find such a good posture. Of course, if Talon had chosen to fight to the death, it would have been a different strategy. Whoosh! Whoosh! Scarlet and light blue flew out and blasted towards Talon, who was trying to break free from the cage with his half-dead body. Whoosh! 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 Lu Cheng's fingers moved continuously, slashing out streaks and streaks of crystal-clear sword aura at the flying head barbarians blocking his path. Even if the sword aura didn't hit them, it would still cause a layer of ice to form around them and freeze them. When they fell to the ground, they wouldn't be able to move for a while. Once the sword aura hit them, the fog would solidify and they would shatter into pieces. Rumble! Rumble! Crimson red and light blue smashed into Talon, creating a violent explosion that stirred up dark clouds. Just as the flames dimmed, Lu Qing had already moved forward. Facing his opponent, whose sturdy body had cracked, he launched an aggressive and frenzied attack that burned like flames. I didn't want to waste time, so I quickly closed it and reopened it. At this time, I was given the option to restore the document. I thought that since I didn't add a record of the outline and settings today, there was no need to restore it, so I chose no. After I finished checking, I looked at the document I was writing and realized that it had been closed without me noticing. I clicked on it and saw that the 3,000 words I wrote were gone, leaving less than 100 words at the beginning. Less than 100 words. My settings were to be automatically saved after 10 minutes. At this moment, anyone who had written before could understand how I felt. I was completely disheartened and in so much pain that I almost asked for leave. I would have continued writing tomorrow after I sorted out my emotions. The last time I lost a manuscript was when I was writing Jinx. At that time, I was writing a stockpile of manuscripts. Hence, I didn't want to write and wasted an entire afternoon trying to restore the data. However, it didn't work. After trying for half an hour to no avail, I forced myself to rewrite. As this was the 3,000 words I had written before, it was faster than usual. I finally managed to finish it in time. However, I couldn't write the remaining chapter today as the doctor had asked me to sleep at 10. I owe him 1 chapter. Including the one I promised last month, there are 3 chapters in total. Chapter 685. Bam! 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 Lu Qing spread out his fists, punching, thrusting, crushing, and hammering. Every move was heavy and carried a tinge of purple. He launched a frenzied attack with no gaps in between, just like the blazing flames in the prairie. In terms of close combat, both fire-like invasion and blizzard storm belonged to the best of the best in this field. Lu Qing was a martial artist who specialized in this field. In an instant, he completely suppressed Talon, causing him to be unable to cope with his attacks and be unable to do anything. However, Talon's half-dead body had immense strength and could move like the wind. He was slightly better than Lu Qing in these two aspects. Moreover, his body was sturdy, close to the strength of the Golden Bell shield of the same level. Ordinary attacks and flames had little effect on him. Therefore, he relied on simple and violent moves to block his opponent. Although he was at a disadvantage, he didn't panic and didn't show any signs of losing. If it weren't for such a miraculous half-dead body technique, it wouldn't have become one of the supreme secret arts of the Witch King lineage. Rumble. 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 As their fists and feet collided, the purple flames scattered and the grayish-white light dimmed. Muffled thunder-like sounds echoed continuously. They seemed to stack together, but at the same time, they seemed to last forever. As they fought, rings of white air billows gushed out from the places where Lu Qing and Talon exchanged blows. They stirred up strong winds, stirring up dirt and even blowing away broken trees. Shadow Hunter Qing'an had wanted to use the fact that he was an inhuman expert to approach and assist Lu Qing. He wanted to quickly finish off the physical invulnerability Mighty One with countless strange skills. However, he couldn't break through the wind barrier. The further he went, the harder it got. In the end, he couldn't even move an inch. Seeing that the battle was at a stalemate, with no clear victor and no opportunity to escape, Talon's heart sank. This was because the half-dead body technique could only last for 5 minutes. As these thoughts flashed through his mind, he clenched his teeth and twisted his arms forward. They transformed into 2 pythons and coiled around Lu Chang's fists. At the same time, his eyes turned green. Black smoke rose from his grayish-white cracked skin. His body instantly shrank by a size. The moment the black smoke appeared, it took shape and turned into half a ring. It wrapped around Lu Qing, then contracted and locked him in place. Witch King's secret technique, Ghost Lock. Faced with such a situation, Lu Qing took a deep breath, retracted his qi and blood, and forcefully pulled back his fist. Ice and fire embraced each other as the great pellet condensed. He shifted the constellations and outlined the word battle that seemed to be able to battle the heavens and the earth. At this moment, Talon didn't take the opportunity to attack. Instead, he retracted his arms and formed a strange seal in front of him. Bang! Lu Cheng's body expanded, causing the ghost lock to crack apart. Talon's figure turned eerily blurry as though he had turned into a grayish-white shadow. The shadow twisted and collapsed, splitting into 9 parts. They fled at high speed in various directions of the forest. Each one seemed to be fake, but each one could be real. It was the ultimate escape technique of the Witch Kings, chaos of the 9 suns. Lu Qing quickly reformed his ice heart and used the deity spell above his head. However, he still couldn't tell which shadow was Talon. Seeing that the other party was about to escape from the range of his mind power, he raised his hands to draw the ancient characters and said in a dignified voice, "Column." The decueing formula of the 9 words formula. The original purpose of this secret technique was to stack the strength of a team and complete a joint attack. Like the rope in a tug-of-war, it allowed everyone to rely on each other and tidy up their scattered and messy thoughts. However, such a combination couldn't be forced. After the column formula was used, the other party had to be willing to let go of their subconscious resistance for it to take effect. Therefore, it couldn't create the strange scene of stacking the strength of the enemy. As for Smith and the rest, they were outside of his mental range, so they weren't within the effective range of the column formula. Lu Qing used it at this moment to test the waters. The real Talon would resist, but the illusory shadow wouldn't react unless it had sentience. This way, it would be clear who was real and who was fake. In a flash, Lu Qing found a way to break through the chaos of the 9 suns. He didn't take the conventional route. A mysterious feeling spread rapidly. His mind seemed to have turned into a radar. In the blink of an eye, feedback appeared. Lu Qing aimed at the grayish-white shadow on his left and threw a punch. Bzzzt bzzzt bzzzt. Behind his back and under his feet, waves of light blue flames spurted out, pushing him through layers of air barriers. He flashed behind the shadow and struck the back of its head without slowing down. Talon's pupils contracted. His eyes narrowed to the size of a needle. He didn't expect the chaos of the 9 suns to be able to fool Lu Qing all the time. However, he believed that Lu Qing wouldn't be able to tell in a short period of time. This confidence was cultivated from hundreds of battles. Once he entered a safe distance, he would have too many ways to escape pursuit. However, Lu Qing didn't waste any time. He seemed to have seen through the real thing at a glance. This was simply too frightening, enough to make one feel despair. As his thoughts drifted, Talon's eyes revealed a ruthless look. He leaned forward and dodged the iron fist that was aimed at the back of his head. At the same time, he raised his left arm as though he was subconsciously maintaining his balance. Bam! Lu Qing ignited Emperor Yen force. He lowered his shoulder and forcefully changed the direction of his fist. The punch was supposed to be a hammer strike. At that moment, Talon's raised left arm suddenly exploded. Blood and flesh splattered and drenched half of Lu Qing's body. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Amidst the terrifying sounds of corrosion, Talon's dark green martial arts suit turned black and tattered. The skin on Lu Qing's arms, shoulders, chest, and face started to fester rapidly. Worms seemed to have fused with Talon's flesh as they wriggled and tried to burrow into his body. Shaman King's body-damaging secret technique, flesh and blood spirit goo. The intense pain caused Lu Qing's hammer strike to lose its strength. His body paused involuntarily. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Talon accelerated again and pounced towards the forest at the edge of the clearing. Lu Qing's ice heart swayed but didn't disintegrate. He endured the pain and executed Lord Emperor's purple flames. With a whoosh, faint purple flames appeared around his body. They wandered around the surface of his body like flowing water, igniting Talon's flesh and blood. The tiny insects turned black, then charred, and finally started burning. No goo worm wasn't afraid of flames. If there was, he would increase the temperature. Bam, bam, bam. Amidst the purple flames, the bits of flesh either turned to ashes or fell off. Lu Qing's skin, muscles, and hair merely curled up slightly and gave off a barbecued smell. This was the fire control ability of a fire sect physical invulnerability expert. While the faint purple flames around him swayed and danced, Lu Qing endured the pain and raised his hands. Using an area of effect technique, he started forming hand seals at Talon, who was moving left and right. As the ancient word formed, he exhaled and said, "Confrontation." The hatred and urgency in Talon's heart dissipated instantly. He became sluggish and drowsy, returning to his usual state of recuperation after being injured. Not good. He bit the tip of his tongue and forcefully raised his mentality. At this moment, the ancient word in Lu Qing's mind changed. He used the simplified attainment formula and caught up to Talon in 2 strides. He shook his arm and threw a punch. Talon shook off his sluggish and drowsy state. He quickly lowered his missing left shoulder and blocked his opponent's right fist. Throughout the entire process, he didn't panic. He remembered to let the grayish-white fog pass under his skin to prevent freezing and stiffening. As for explosions and burns, he had to rely on the sturdiness of his body. Just as the two came into contact, Lu Qing suddenly turned his fist into a palm. Pressing down with force, he bent his back and flipped himself up. He leaped above his opponent and threw a punch headfirst at his Baihui acupoint. Talon's half-dead body had outstanding brute strength and incredible speed. However, when it came to close combat techniques, he couldn't catch up to Lu Qing no matter how hard he tried. Seeing the sudden turn of events, he could only shrink his neck in panic and raise his right fist. However, Lu Qing opened his left hand again and pressed lightly on Talon's fist, infusing it with ice spirit force. Then, using the force, he flipped over and jumped to the back of his opponent. While in mid-air, he tightened his right leg and whipped it backwards like a steel whip with a spring attached to it. Talon's body turned cold and slowed down slightly. He wanted to throw himself forward, but it was too late. He barely avoided being hit in his vital organs and was kicked in the right shoulder by Lu Qing. Bam! His shoulder collapsed and was badly mangled. Although his arm didn't fall off, he couldn't exert any strength. Feeling a chill in his heart, Talon twisted his body like a boneless person and looked at Lu Qing. His eyes burned like green flames as a strange and terrifying feeling spread out. Lu Qing, who had just steadied himself and turned his body, instantly felt his surroundings turn dark. The craters left behind by the cannon fire had disappeared. The dense forest had disappeared. Smith and the rest had disappeared as well. The darkness was quickly dyed with green, blood red, and other colors. Talon stood out. He was at least 100 meters tall, with heads and arms all over his body. Countless eyes stared at him without blinking. The intense fear seemed to materialize and turned into a sea of insects that covered the sky. As Monster Talon's countless huge palms pressed down, they drowned out Lu Qing. Secret spirit technique of the Witch King lineage, savage sacrifice. Lu Qing's body was transparent as though he was made of ice crystals. Under such circumstances and attacks, cracks appeared one after another. Even with enemy heart-freezing move, he couldn't completely neutralize his opponent's attack. At the critical moment, Lu Qing suddenly disappeared from Monster Talon's eyes. In addition to the dark green and blood-red colors, there was a boundless darkness. There were also distant and resplendent stars. The 100-meter-tall giant and the innumerable insects were so small that they could be ignored. The terrifying atmosphere suddenly weakened by quite a bit. Just as Talon was about to respond, the stars started to move rapidly, forming 9 mysterious and ancient words. Confrontation. Army. Fighting. Swordsman. Wholeness. Formation. Deference. Forwarding. Attainment. In an instant, the 9 ancient words shone brightly and pierced through the pure mental domain. They tore apart the green, blood, insects, and giant. Talon instinctively tilted his head back as grayish-white blood flowed out of his nose. Rumble. Smith and the rest seized the opportunity and fired a rocket, forcing Talon to dodge pathetically. Both his arms were disabled, his attacks were ineffective, his enemies surrounded him, and his opponents were strong. All of this made him feel despair. Ruthlessness reappeared in Talon's eyes as he looked at Lu Qing and shouted, "Let's die together." His grayish-white body spontaneously combusted. His flesh and soul turned into the most ferocious curse, silently and formlessly attacking Lu Qing. He didn't know where to dodge. It was Life Curse, the secret technique of the Witch Kings that would perish together. He wanted to use the curse ignited by his life to break through the defense of his opponent's supernatural ability. Lu Qing was alarmed. Without thinking, he retracted his qi and blood to balance the ice and fire, forming the Jindan that looked like a miniature universe. After the real Jindan shattered and fused with his body, his ability to repel curses had indeed improved. However, compared to the Longhu Immortal, who was truly skilled in curses, he was still lacking. He wasn't as strong as when he had the Jindan. However, the Longhu Immortal's ability didn't appear out of nowhere. It was based on his Jin Dan technique, 9 words formula, and secret technique. Unfortunately, for a physical invulnerability mighty one who was skilled in curses, Lu Cheng had obtained all of these. Therefore, he could temporarily improve his ability to repel curses in battle. The stars moved and the 9 words formula formed a complicated seal script. Ripples spread to every corner of the universe. The blood was swept away. The flames on Talon's body were extinguished as his body melted like a candle. The light in his eyes faded. Talon muttered to himself, "Why is everything countered by you?" His voice gradually faded into silence. Soon, he was reduced to a pile of flesh and blood. Smith, Dwight, Chingen, Jian Dan, and the rest watched from afar, forgetting to put down their weapons. A physical invulnerability terror grade expert had fallen in front of them. And he only had one opponent. P.S. After a long time of not having enough words, I've finally exceeded the word count once again. Chapter 686. Report the situation to the Joint Command Center. Lu Qing turned his head and looked at Shadow Hunter Chingen. The corroded parts of his body were starting to scab, and the pain was still lingering. The purple flames gradually extinguished, revealing his upper body that contained terrifying power. He took a deep breath and resisted the urge to grimace. He was puzzled by the development of the situation. The physical invulnerability expert just now should belong to the branch of the Witch King. In a situation where he was restrained by himself, it shouldn't be a problem for him to make the decision to escape. But in the end, he first damaged his body and risked his life, then used a curse that would take him down with him. It didn't make sense. Normally speaking, in a hopeless situation where both parties didn't have a deep hatred for each other, shouldn't surrendering be the natural choice? Wouldn't it be better to preserve his useful body and wait for hope to appear? For a physical invulnerability expert, he would be valued no matter which force he joined. Of course, there would be some control measures, just like number 16 and number 17. This was already a very bad ending. The branch of the Witch King that he belonged to would pay a sufficient price to exchange him back. After all, it was very difficult to nurture a physical invulnerability expert. You had to look at the sky. With such a backup plan, why would the other party sacrifice himself? Could it be that the secret he was involved in was more important than his life? It was because of his misjudgment of the enemy's attitude that Lu Qing was almost invaded by the goo worm and suffered serious injuries. That was why he resisted the curse that would take him down with him. If his realm and strength were slightly lower, it would be questionable whether he would still be standing in one piece. Yes. Hearing Lu Cheng's order, Chingen hurriedly answered. Unknowingly, his tone was subconsciously filled with respect and fear. He retracted his gaze, took out his satellite phone, and started to contact the command center. Not far away, Smith stared blankly at the puddle of flesh and blood. Then, he shifted his gaze to Lu Qing. He felt that Lu Qing hadn't changed much from the first time he saw him. The only difference was that he looked more mature and reserved. However, the terror-grade corpse in front of him silently contradicted his senses. Every time they met, his strength would increase tremendously. It was as if there was no limit or delay. Even when he came to Connecticut once a month, it was the same, just not as exaggerated. But now, he had grown into an expert that Smith looked up to, a terrifying figure who could kill a terror-grade expert alone. Was this the path of strength displayed by the best fighting prodigies? Like the Dragon King and the Warrior Sage in China, or the Saint and the Hand of Order in the Big Apple? Living in the information age, it was not that Smith had never seen the top experts, but that was all through the screen. He could not personally experience the horror of the qualitative changes that happened every once in a while. Now, he understood. This was a growth rate that made people despair and lose their confidence. At the same time, he came to a deeper realization. The other party was really a troublemaker, the source of accidents. Stay away from the building and be safe. At this moment, the voice of the higher-ups of the Joint Command Headquarters came from Ching An's satellite phone. Did you identify that physical invulnerability expert? I've taken a picture and will send it back for comparison soon. It's suspected to be Talon from the branch of the Witch King. Ching An often came to the war-torn zones to carry out missions, so he was no stranger to the famous masters in this area. Very good. Where are Ta Gu and his trusted subordinates? Was there a solution? Are there any survivors? All dead, except for Ta Gu. The rest were killed by the suspected physical invulnerability expert, probably to silence them, Ching An answered honestly. Silence. This is a little strange. The higher-ups pondered for a moment before asking, did that physical invulnerability expert leave behind any clues? No. Ching An glanced at the pile of flesh and blood and added in a low voice, he's already dead. There was silence on the other end, and even the sound of breathing seemed to have disappeared. After a long while, Ching An heard a slightly anxious new question. How did he die? By. Ching An swallowed his saliva and said, killed by Mr. Liu. In the Joint Command Headquarters, the gathered higher-ups were once again at a loss for words. Oh my God! A few seconds later, a brown-haired man exclaimed. If it was Talon, he would indeed be countered by Liu, said a blue-eyed woman in a dark green military uniform. Even so, it's very, very difficult to kill a terror-grade expert. The brown-haired man shrugged and spread his hands. The higher-ups sent by China looked at each other, unsure if they should join the discussion or be more reserved. Would it be immodest of us to express our admiration and praise from the bottom of our hearts? Just as they were hesitating, the blue-eyed woman suddenly gasped. The previous time the commenter came to the war-torn zones, 2 terror-grade experts, number 16 and number 18, also died. She had participated in the follow-up negotiations and understood the situation well. The brown-haired man rolled his eyes and blurted out, last time, when he came to Nile, even more terror-grade experts died. Among them, the deaths of the Dark Knight Bat and the Mummy are suspected to be related to him. Nile was also considered a war-torn zone back then. One of the higher-ups couldn't help but add. All 3 times he came to the war-torn zones, all 3 times involved the death of terror-grade experts, without exception. The blue-eyed woman's voice grew softer, and there was a hint of fear in her voice. Could he really be a human-shaped catastrophe that targets terror-grade experts? The brown-haired man muttered to himself. We have to restrict him from coming here in the future. Is it really okay to discuss this in front of us? Besides, all of you are only at the inhuman stage or below. There's no need to worry. The higher-ups of China looked at each other and didn't interrupt. They calmed down and quickly ordered Ching An to collect the corpses of suspected Tashlans and other valuable items and return to the command center as soon as possible. He was also to keep it a secret. If there was a leak, he would be court-martialed. Ching An hung up the phone and passed the order to the others. Dwayne frowned. He did not hide his doubts and asked, what's the matter? Why did he commit suicide? Why didn't he surrender? In his opinion, sacrificing one's life to curse Lu Qing was equivalent to suicide. Maybe he's a physical invulnerability expert with ideals and uncompromising perseverance. Jian Dan replied half-jokingly and half-seriously. There were indeed such physical invulnerability experts, but they were all people with strong wills. Maybe he hates being controlled, or maybe it's related to curses. He should belong to the branch of the Witch King. If there's a big secret behind him, he might hand over something important to him. Once he surrenders, he will be cursed from afar. Ching An made a deduction based on what he had seen and heard over the years. Possible. Lu Qing nodded slowly. Let's return as soon as possible. The follow-up investigation wasn't within the scope of his mission. There were plenty of professionals in the military. As for assigning a new mission, that would have to wait until he had some clues about the secret. It seemed like it would be difficult to come up with a direction for the time being. So, I have to go home for the holidays and Connecticut for the new year. Outside the forest, in a camouflaged armored vehicle. A middle-aged man with grayish-white eyes, who seemed to be blind, leaned against the back of a chair and looked outside. He wore a black short-sleeved shirt, which was very characteristic of the war-torn zones. His hair was combed neatly, and his face had a hint of green. He was the current generation's Witch King, Ruo Axayan. The mission this time was only to rescue Ta Gu. The Witch King lineage was the best choice, and they didn't reject it. However, Ruoxin didn't appear personally and was only there to provide support. If the matter was exposed, Talon's personal actions and the Witch King lineage's involvement were two completely different concepts. The other party wouldn't pay the same amount of attention. At this moment, there was a sudden cracking sound. A puppet placed on the platform in front of Ruo Axayan collapsed and broke into pieces. It originally had many dark red patterns, and its face was similar to Talon's. Especially its eyes, they were vivid and seemed to have a life of their own. Voodoo marionette. It was the foundation of the Witch King's practice of curses. When it was fully mastered, it would become the most important and fatal thing in itself. If it was mastered by a master who was also skilled in curses, it would be at the mercy of others. Talon is dead. Witch King Ruo Axayan's eyes shrunk, and he couldn't help but blurt out. As doubts and shock flashed through his mind, his hand gesture changed. The grayish-white color gathered, and a foot-long glow shot out from his eyes as he muttered. He wanted to use Talon's voodoo marionette to remotely connect with Talon's soul that had just passed away and find out what had happened before his death. The broken puppet flew up, burning fiercely with grayish-white flames. Within the flames, a scene quickly took shape. It was a scene of boundless darkness and bright stars. Immediately after, an extremely complicated seal script appeared. It suddenly rippled and extinguished the flames. Cough. Ruo Axayan tilted his head back and coughed. Two streams of dark red liquid flowed out from his nose. He covered his nose with his hand. His eyes flickered, and he instructed his subordinates, "Leave this place." In the military airport, Lu Qing received a call from Empress Luo, Ningzitong. You really did cause an accident. This experienced senior beauty was a little helpless. After handing over the task and being escorted out of the territory, Lu Qing laughed dryly. That's their own problem. Ningzitong was silent for a few seconds before saying, killing a physical invulnerability expert single-handedly is something you should be proud of for a while. Your master only managed to do it after years of immersion in the physical invulnerability stage. As for the merit, we'll investigate it later. If it involves a major problem, you don't have to do anything else. You can go and study the restriction sect, Clear Jade chapter. Thank you, Sister Ning, Lu Qing replied happily. After hanging up, he wondered if he should brag to his master. However, after a long time, he still couldn't get through. It wasn't that there was no signal or that the phone was switched off, but that no one was picking up. Chapter 687. Wuyue Province, Moshang City. Shi Yuejian was leisurely experimenting with new cooking methods when she suddenly heard the vibration of a mobile phone in the living room. Dad, why didn't you answer the phone? She asked loudly, raising the volume. A nuisance call. Geezer Shi answered concisely. As soon as the vibration stopped, he immediately unlocked the screen, clicked on the settings, and switched to Do Not Disturb mode. Fortunately, I've learned this trick recently. Otherwise, that brat would be so proud of himself. Geezer Shi muttered to himself. His information network was extremely fast and accurate. At this moment, Shi Yuejian came out of the kitchen, holding her mobile phone. Half puzzled and half amused, she said, "Little junior brother called me. She said she couldn't reach her dad and asked if something had happened." He still cared about his teacher. Geezer Sher's face darkened. He reached out and took the phone unhappily. Lu Qing hung up the phone with satisfaction and left the military base. He arrived at Huaqing Heishui Airport and flew directly to Gaofen, the capital of Xing Province. When he landed, Yanjika had just woken up and read the news. She was quite excited to talk about the strange abilities of the Witch King with him. While chatting, Lu Qing put on the black-rimmed glasses that covered half of his face and hailed a taxi to Gaofen City. When he was in Huiyuan, he had made an appointment with Jiang Fei and Qin Rui to have a meal before the holidays. When they were on holiday, he would have flown to America. He had to cherish this opportunity that came only once every 6 months. As his reputation grew, it was uncertain whether he would be able to enter the country in the future. Fortunately, Ku only had 1.5 years of courses left, which meant he could enter the country 3 times. Before the rush hour, Lu Qing arrived at the restaurant Jiang Fei had mentioned, Old Cold Skewers. He also saw his best friend who seemed to have put on some weight and had an oily face. "It's not easy. It's really not easy to have a meal with you now." Jiang Fei stood up with a smile and pulled out a chair for Lu Qing to put his backpack. "Fatty Jiang, you're not being honest. If you want to come to Huaqing, I'm always free." Lu Qing joked and asked casually, "Qin Rui hasn't arrived yet?" "He's stuck in traffic. There's a huge traffic jam coming from the west. It'll probably take another 5 or 6 minutes. Let me tell you, when eating in Gaofen, don't go to big restaurants or fancy places. You have to eat at small roadside restaurants like this. As long as you can find a good one, the taste will be amazing. This one opened not long ago, and I've certified it. It's much better than those that can be found everywhere in chain stores, especially the celery beef. TSK, you can give it a try." Lu Qing glanced at the greasy but clean shop and asked with a smile, "Do they count or weigh?" In this kind of string business, one would either count the number of sticks or weigh the overall weight of the sticks. Then, one would divide it by a single stick to get the approximate data. This would not be very accurate, but it was convenient. "I'm counting," Jiang Fei answered, a little confused. Lu Qing chuckled and made a joke. "Won't the waiter be crying from counting later?" Jiang Fei immediately understood what he meant and could not help but sigh. "Say, you eat so much more than me, but why don't you get fat?" "If you have my training intensity, you won't get fat," Lu Qing joked. Jiang Fei's face twitched and he said self-deprecatingly, "But I'll die." After that, the two laughed at the same time, got up, found a large iron plate, and finished all the celery beef, coriander beef, spicy beef, and Scottish fold beef in the refrigerator. "Can you eat so much?" The waitress looked at them blankly. There were at least 600 or 700 skewers, right? The kitchen couldn't keep up with the speed of the beef skewers. "We have a lot of people, but we haven't arrived yet," Lu Qing explained seriously. "Oh." The waitress suddenly understood. Laoling kebab belonged to the hot pot category, so it had to be cooked by oneself. Lu Qing and Jiang Fei had just mixed the sauce and prepared a batch when they saw Qin Rui, who was more than 1.9 meters tall, enter the shop with his head lowered. "You're late, you'll be punished with 3 glasses of wine." Fatty Jiang shouted. Because they were both in Gaofen, he and Qin Rui, who were single, had been eating together for the past few months. They were much closer than before. I'll replace the wine with tea." Qin Rui pulled over a chair and asked. "Tea? We're all drinkers." Jiang Fei laughed. "Then I'll punish myself with 3 bottles of herbal tea." Qin Rui relaxed immediately. Lu Qing saw that his qi and blood had reached a certain level, so he asked with interest, Are you trying to break through to the dance stage recently? Sigh, don't mention it. I can't find the direction at all. I've increased the number of times I participate in the arena, but I still don't feel it. Qin Rui replied, half bitter and half expectant. Since he came to Gaofen, he had sought refuge in the martial arts club that his master was familiar with. He had formed a team with a group of like-minded peers to participate in the preliminaries. He had been defeated time and time again, and had gradually transformed into a real professional ninth pin fighter. This year, he had signed up for many small-scale individual arena competitions and received the prize money for the first time in his life. Lu Qing thought for a moment and said, try another way. Don't be too busy with the competition. Take some time out and go on a solo trip. It's best if it's a spacious, vast, and magnificent place. You can learn how to fish and study the art of tea. In short, find something else to do and experience a different life. This will help you tap into the strength and the depths of your heart, the strength that supports you to move forward. If you feel it, grasp it and design a certain way to polish your will. At this stage, my master once gave me 10 words, and I'll give them to you as well. Human body Big Dan, bright and round. Well, I'll try it later. Qin Rui nodded, not quite understanding, but he had already decided to do as he was told. After talking about martial arts for a while, Lu Qing picked up the skewers, cut the beef, and let it roll a few times in the sauce. Then he put it into his mouth. He felt that the meat was tender and smooth. The taste of the celery subdued some of the unpleasantness of the meat. With the help of chili and sesame oil, it tasted great. Not bad. Fatty Jiang, you're really good at eating. Lu Qing praised and then asked, how's it going? How's life in the factory recently? It's still the same. We study mechanics, what else can we do? Zhang Fei suddenly said indignantly, I originally thought that I could meet girls working in the factory, but it turns out that most of the people in this company are men. I feel like I'll always be single. I think I'll always be lonely for the rest of my life. Qin Rui helped him to match the music. Don't worry, in a few years, your parents will arrange blind dates for you. Lu Qing didn't know if he was comforting him or provoking him, and even if there are girls working in the factory, I don't think you'll like them. Well, I feel like we don't have anything in common, and I don't know what to talk about when we get married. Zhang Fei, who was single, thought about his life after marriage and then sighed, the factory is so boring, and I don't see any promotion for a while. A few of my batch have already left, and my master keeps praising me, saying that I'm steady, not impetuous, and can calm down to do things. In fact, I'm often troubled, thinking about whether to take the postgraduate entrance exam or start a business, but I forget about it in a second. Ever since we met, I've always admired you for that. You have a good attitude and don't remember your troubles, said Lu Qing sincerely. When you've decided on a direction to strive for, if there's anything you need help with, feel free to look for me. This was also the main reason why his friendship with Fatty Jiang could last so long, and not fade away slowly. Some people can be friends for life, while others can only be friends for a period of time. Zhang Fei's eyes lit up. That's great. I'll remember what you said. Lu Qing laughed and teased, Fatty Jiang, I'm just being polite, why are you so impolite? Hee, thick-skinned people live better lives. Zhang Fei laughed proudly. As he ate, Qin Rui remembered something and said with a smile, Qing, every holiday outside your neighborhood almost becomes an acrobatic performance ground. Why? Lu Qing was confused. Every holiday, many parents bring their children who have just started practicing martial arts to train and perform stunts outside your neighborhood. They wonder if a physical invulnerability mighty one will coincidentally come home and see their child's potential and take him in as a disciple, explained Qin Rui without much literary talent. Lu Qing couldn't help but laugh. Aren't they thinking too much? Everyone in the neighborhood knew where his neighborhood was, so it couldn't be hidden. However, with the government and the military taking care of it in the open and in the dark, it wasn't to the extent of disturbing his parents' daily lives. I've heard about this too. I was just passing by last time. Cheng, let me tell you, I even saw a monkey performer. I don't know if he saw the crowd and decided to perform to earn money, or if he wanted you to take his monkey in as a disciple, said Zhang Fei with a laugh. Lu Cheng was amused. I can try to teach it about cultivation. Ever since he had advanced to physical invulnerability, he was always free at home, not on holidays. After chatting for a while on this topic, Qin Rui asked curiously, Qing, you haven't participated in the recent title matches. Are you conserving your energy and preparing to shock the world? Not exactly shocking the world, but I've participated in key events. After the new year, my goal is to do well in the top professional competitions and try for the Battle of Warrior Sage in May and the Battle of the Kings in December. Let's see how far I can go. As for the other title matches, I might give up or just familiarize myself with my opponents and practice my moves, answered Lu Qing as he pondered. In May, I'll have been at physical invulnerability for almost a year. In December, I'll be at least a year and a half. Then I wish you a better ranking. Zhang Fei and Qin Rui picked up their drinks. The next day, Lu Qing bade them farewell and boarded the high-speed train back to Shushan. Outside the window, dark clouds covered the sky. The weather was terrible. When he arrived at his hometown and walked out of the high-speed train station, he saw snowflakes fluttering in the air. Since Lu Cheng was born, it had only snowed 3 times in Shushan. This was the 4th. Timely snow promises a bountiful year, exclaimed Lu Cheng with a smile. Chapter 688. No one came to pick him up after he exited the high-speed rail station. Lu Qing disguised himself and hailed a black cab. He negotiated the price from 30 to 15 with a disdainful attitude. It had nothing to do with money. He just didn't want to be fooled by the driver. If he wasn't in a good mood, he would have crushed the road with his feet. Lu Qing arrived home without a word. He put down his backpack, hailed a cab, and went straight to Shushan City Hotel. Today was Lu Yanwei's wedding day. He had planned to come back early to observe the wedding preparations and gain some experience. However, he was delayed by a temporary task and could only attend the main event. At the entrance of the luxurious city hotel, there was a huge picture of Lu Yanwei and his bride, Tang Ning. There were balloons, flowers, and other decorations. It was a joyous occasion. Her face is still so round. Lu Qing chuckled and took out the red envelope he had prepared in advance. To the left of the entrance was the place to sign in and receive cash gifts. Lu Yanwei and his wife stood there, welcoming guests with a smile. You're back. As a relative, Lu Yanwei recognized him immediately even though Lu Qing was wearing black-rimmed glasses and a baseball cap that covered half of his face. He hesitated but didn't show it. Of course. Lu Qing chuckled and handed the red envelope to his cousin. He looked around and said, "Let's talk about it later. There are quite a lot of guests." He turned to look at Tang Ning and called out with a smile, "Hello, Tang Ning." "Hello, sister-in-law." Tang Ning was a pretty girl from a humble family. She looked a little strange with the heavy makeup on her wedding day. She and Lu Yanwei were online dating. They dated for a long time and spent some time together in real life before they got married. She responded to Lu Cheng's greeting with a smile. When he entered the banquet hall, she came back to her senses. She opened her eyes wide and approached Lu Yanwei. She whispered in his ear, "Your younger brother." "The famous younger brother." "Yeah." Lu Yanwei smiled and nodded proudly. He squeezed the red envelope and found that it was so thin that he couldn't feel anything. He opened it curiously and saw only a piece of paper. He took it out and scanned it. It was a check. At this moment, he suddenly remembered the joke that Lu Qing had made in the family group chat. Then I'll close my eyes and press 0. It's fate to write more or less. It's true. Lu Yanwei was both amused and dumbfounded. Stepping into the banquet hall, Lu Qing looked around and sensed his surroundings. In an instant, he found his parents. They were helping to greet some familiar guests, such as his ex-neighbor, Zhao Zijuan, who was already a director. His daughter and my brother went on a blind date. Wouldn't it be awkward for her to come to his wedding? Lu Qing complained in his heart. He leaned over and said in a low voice, Dad, Mom, Uncle Zhao, Auntie Huang. Qi Fang glared at him. Why didn't you come back last night? We have to hurry. All kinds of things happen when you're out there. Zhao Zijuan chimed in and responded to Lu Cheng's greeting in a slightly restrained manner. When he first approached Lu Jisheng and his wife, he thought that his son was acquainted with Director Xing and had a good relationship with him. Furthermore, his son had potential, background, and a bright future. Who would have thought that in just a few short years, he would have a bright future, let alone a Shushan prefecture-level city police chief? His status and identity no longer needed others to set him off. Thinking back, it was like a dream. Yeah, I haven't seen Fatty Jiang and Jiang Fei in a long time. Lu Qing smiled. After a few words of greeting, Zhao Zijuan said goodbye and returned to his seat. After a few steps, he suddenly turned around and said with a smile, Director Xing is here too. Uncle Xing is here too. Where is he? Lu Qing was surprised. He didn't know his cousin. In front. Zhao Zijuan looked at Lu Cheng's disguise. Do you want me to call him? No need. I'll call him directly. Lu Qing waved his phone. Okay, then we'll wait for the wedding to start. Zhao Zijuan and Huang Kun returned to their seats reluctantly. Lu Qing dialed the number and walked out of the banquet hall to a secluded lounge. After a few minutes, he heard Xing Qingwu's hearty laughter. You just came back. Yeah, I just put my luggage down and came back. I didn't expect to see you here. Lu Qing greeted him with a smile. Xing Qingwu laughed and said, I'm familiar with your brother. He has been following Erzi for 2 years and is familiar with the land in Shushan. Some of the higher-ups didn't come because of their status, but they all sent gifts. TSK, he had made a name for himself. Even if he didn't follow Erzi, with such connections, he could do anything in Shushan as long as he didn't break the law. Lu Qing was surprised and happy at the same time. He joked, Uncle Xing, as the police chief, it's enough. Xing Qingwu replaced the retired director a month ago and officially took charge of the Shushan police system. Are you making fun of your Uncle Xing? Xing Qingwu stared at him deliberately. I'm the director and most of the people give you face. I didn't mention anything. Lu Qing spread his hands and smiled. He asked, I heard that Sister Jingjing took the initiative to practice and won't be back until Chinese New Year. As for where he heard it from, of course, it was his classmate Ku. She has the guidance of a physical invulnerability senior who specializes in illusion-type martial arts. She's making rapid progress. In 1 or 2 years, she might even reach the inhuman level and surpass me, her father. Xing Qingwu's face glowed with pride when he talked about his daughter's growth. Like father, like daughter. Lu Qing joked. Xing Qingwu chatted happily for a while, then suddenly sighed and said, she's good at everything now, but she's still not willing to come into contact with men. Sigh, as parents, we don't ask for much. What we want is for our children to have a companion by their side when they grow up after we pass away. They can talk to each other, and they won't be alone in the house. That's what it means when young couples grow old. Actually, being a bachelor isn't bad. It's more comfortable and relaxing. Lu Cheng's voice gradually became softer and less convincing. Xing Qinglu's eyes were clearly saying that a man with a girlfriend who was about to get married had no right to say such things. Xing Qinglu wiped his hair with his hand that was as thick as a bear's paw and said, "Sigh, you don't have to comfort me. Your aunt and I have thought about it. Jingjing hates men. We won't force her. Anyway, it's fine as long as she has a companion. We can also accept girls." Lu Qing was speechless for a moment. After a long time, he gave a thumbs up and said, "Uncle Xing, you guys are so fashionable." After chatting for a while, Lu Qing and Xing Qinglu returned to the banquet hall and sat down. Lu Qing was worried that people would remember his disguise, so he decided to show his real face. After all, the people at the same table were his grandparents, aunts, and cousins. But even so, as soon as he sat down, he felt many gazes on him. Some were excited, some were curious, and some were pointing at him and discussing animatedly. "Brother Lu Qing, I finally understand what it means to be a public figure," Qi Yunfei, who was studying in university, said with a smile. Since leaving Shushan and going to Gaofen, she had been dressing fashionably. Coupled with her cute and pretty face, she had many suitors. Just as Lu Qing was about to answer, he suddenly saw a girl with big eyes, hunched over from the other side of the wedding platform. She took out her notebook and pen excitedly and nervously, saying, "Hello, Mr. Zhang. Lu Qing, can I have your autograph?" "Okay." Lu Qing casually took the pen and paper and scribbled his name on the paper. He wrote his name in a flamboyant style. At this time, he found that a few people were ready to move. He passed the pen and paper back and said to the girl with big eyes, "You told them not to come together, one by one, and not to ruin the wedding, right?" Yes. The girl nodded vigorously and then turned back. She lowered her voice and said to her companions, He talked to me. So, you've forgotten what I've told you." Lu Qing had excellent hearing and almost covered his face. After the commotion, it was finally quiet. Qi Yunfei looked at him with a smile and took out a thick notebook and pen from her bag. "Brother Lu Qing, I almost forgot if they didn't ask for your autograph. Come, sign it, every page." "Are you rebelling?" Lu Qing said with a smile. "Brother Lu Qing, Sister Feifei wants to be a profiteer." Chen Xiaoxiao, who was still in high school and still had baby fat, exposed her sister's purpose. Feeling the gaze of her cousin, mother, grandfather, grandmother, and others, Qi Yunfei smiled embarrassedly. "You don't know, Brother Lu Cheng's autograph is very valuable. It can be sold for so much." She stretched out 5 fingers and gestured. Lu Cheng was dumbfounded. He took the pen and paper and began to sign. "I was thinking that since I'm officially working, I should give some New Year's money to my sisters and brothers who are still in school. Since you can earn it yourself, I'll give you a share." Qi Yunfei's smile froze and she asked blankly, "Brother Lu Qing, how much are you going to give?" "I'm not stingy, am I right, Xiao?" Lu Qing casually gave a number. After his grandfather Qi Jiayu and grandmother Kong Meizhen heard this, they said at the same time, "How can you give so much? You have to spend your money wisely. It's a waste for them to give so much money." "It's not much." Lu Qing evaded the question. Qi Yunfei's lips moved a few times and she said with a sad face, "Brother Lu Qing, I don't want your autograph, I'm wrong. It's already been signed." Lu Qing replied with a smile. "Is this still my brother?" She was sad and indignant. Lu Qing laughed and said, "Only real brothers are like this." "I hate you." Qi Yunfei pretended to be teary. While they were fooling around, the wedding officially began. Lu Qing took out his phone and took pictures and recorded videos to send to his wife. When the bride's father sent her off, the host began to reminisce about the past. The bride couldn't help but cry. Lu Cheng's mouth twitched and he couldn't help but complain to his little fairy on QQ, weddings nowadays really have to be forcefully moved. It's a joyous occasion, but it always makes people sad. That's right, that's right. It's so awkward. We don't need a host in the future. Nodding like a chick pecking at rice. Then how do we proceed? Stunned expression, Lu Qing asked back. You can partner with talk or you can also do a crosstalk, covering mouth and laughing expression, the girl said. Where's the dignity of a physical invulnerability expert? Covering face and sighing expression, Lu Qing said. The rest of the wedding process went smoothly. For the next half a month, Lu Qing stayed at home with his parents except for a few days in Ningxue. Of course, there were also some social activities. It was good to maintain a good relationship with his parents in his hometown. Chapter 689. As New Year's Eve approached, Lu Qing boarded a flight to America. After a long and bumpy flight, he finally arrived in Connecticut. After passing the security check, he secretly heaved a sigh of relief and praised, "You have the bearing of a great nation." After the Talon incident, they actually didn't deny him a visa. They didn't even find an excuse to deny him entry when all the necessary procedures were in place. This is the demeanor of a great nation with confidence. Lu Qing let go of his hidden worries and his mood lightened. He followed the crowd and walked forward. In the Office of Homeland Security in Orion Airport, the person in charge of Connecticut looked at the computer in front of him, which was constantly emitting alarms. He picked up his cup of coffee, took a sip, and pretended to be calm. That bunch of idiots. F*** them. Why did they give this guy a visa? He cursed angrily after his tongue was scalded by the black coffee. Who should I send to monitor an expert in the terror grade who was specially marked with the words calamity and misfortune? Someone who's good at socializing and has outstanding eloquence? He'll definitely be discovered anyway. Why did I send Smith to the Intelligence Bureau? If he was still around, everyone would be relieved. The person in charge had a headache. After 2 minutes of thinking, he decided to consult his superior, the overall boss of the Connecticut area's intelligence, security, and investigation system, the arbiter of the local terror grade experts, the guardian of order, and the famous Odin of the New World, Mr. Gonzalez. Without a doubt, he was also a veteran terror grade expert. After the call went through, hearty laughter came from the other end. Little Charles, have you encountered a problem? Yes, Your Excellency Gonzalez. Lu Qing from China is here again, the person in charge, Charles, answered simply. Gonzalez let out a long sigh. Too bad I'm on vacation. You know, I've accumulated a lot of vacations. I fully trust that you can handle this. Lu from China isn't an expert who ignores the law. It'll be easy to coordinate and communicate well. Yes, Your Excellency Gonzalez. Charles put down the phone and fell into a daze. I just had dinner with him the day before yesterday. I didn't hear him say he was going on vacation. Covering his face with his hands, he calmed down for a few seconds before picking up the phone again. He called in an agent, the one with the least experience and background. Entering the arrival hall, Lu Qing saw Ku at first glance. After that, they hugged, held hands, smiled, and chatted as usual. From time to time, they would exchange some mushy words. It was only when they got into Du Yan's car that they restrained themselves. After successfully arriving at Yan Zhika's residence in the North District of Connecticut, Lu Qing held her hand and excitedly walked to the front of the house. He opened the door by himself. At this time, Yan Zhika rolled her eyes and suddenly said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you something." "What?" Lu Qing heard the sound of the door unlocking and pushed the door open with a smile. My parents said they haven't spent the new year with me for years, so they flew here yesterday to give me a surprise. Yenjika pursed her lips, feeling both helpless and amused. At the same time, the door opened. Empress Dowager Ji Mingyu, who was helping to clear the table, and Yan Kai, who was busy in the kitchen, came into view. Surprise! The corner of Lu Chang's mouth twitched. He quickly put on a smile and shouted, "Auntie, Uncle. Lu, you're here. It's almost time for dinner. Go put your luggage down." Ji Mingyu smiled calmly. Yan Kai also turned his body, looked over, and nodded in greeting. At this time, Yenjika leaned over and whispered in his ear, "I've prepared a new room for you on the second floor." This. Lu Qing turned his head and looked at his wife. He smiled and said, "This is pretty good." A week passed quickly. Lu Qing boarded the flight to Yue province. Recalling the festive atmosphere and daily life of the past few days, he couldn't help but laugh and shake his head. Sometimes, sneaking around is also a form of pleasure, but I can only stay for a few days. It'll be over before I know it. The next time will be in October. In between, he could only rely on Ke to return home during spring break and summer break. He came in a hurry and left in a hurry. Holding his phone, Lu Qing looked out the window and watched the flight leave the ground. At this moment, other than Yenjika, who was reluctant to part, many of the big shots in Connecticut felt much more relaxed. Gonzalez ended his holiday immediately and bid farewell to the beach filled with sunshine and beauties. After staying with his master for a few days, Lu Qing returned home for the 15th. Putting away his lazy and idle feelings, he embarked on the journey of the new year energetically. On the day he returned to Huaqing, he didn't rest and went straight to the Longhu Club. With the help of the volcano laboratory, he tried out the new idea that came to him in the past month. As the boss, and with his little fairy's instructions, he gave his assistant, Amen, and driver, Xiao Zhenhua, a big red packet each. In local terms, it was called profit. After training and showering, Lu Qing dried his hair. He asked Amen to ask if Empress Luo was in the office. After getting an affirmative answer, he went straight and knocked on the door. "Sister Ning, Happy New Year." He pushed the door open and cupped his hands with a smile. Ning Zidong was dressed in bright red but didn't look gaudy at all. Instead, it made her seem a few years younger. "You don't have to be so formal. Didn't we just call to wish each other a Happy New Year?" Ning Zidong fiddled with her bracelet and leaned back with a smile. "Tell me, what do you want to ask?" "I'm considered proficient in the fire sect, but I can't fall behind in the ice sect. I wonder if the military has a place like the polar laboratory nearby. I can't possibly fly to Mosheng twice a week, right?" Lu Qing went straight to the point. "There is. It's about a 2-hour drive." Ning Zidong smiled. "You can look for your master for this. Why ask me? There's no need to trouble two people with the same problem." Lu Qing answered in a good mood after solving the problem. Ning Zidong pondered for a while and said, "Although the follow-up investigation on the Talon incident hasn't yielded any results yet, from the reaction of the Witch King, Ruoxin, to disappear without a trace, it's not a small matter. The military and America are preparing to work together to reconfirm the direction and expand the scope of the investigation. You've contributed quite a bit. After some discussion, we've decided to let you comprehend the Restriction Sex Clear Jade chapter in advance. Wouldn't that make it seem too official?" Lu Qing wasn't mentally prepared at all. He blurted out in surprise. "Just by looking at it now, I don't think my merits are enough, right? You can't just look at yourself." Ning Zidong laughed. "Actually, this is to compensate your master. Back then, he refused to become a real member of the military or join the Longhu Club. That's why he couldn't practice the restriction sect divine arts. If we're just going by merits, he's more than enough to satisfy you 800 times. Since he's a stubborn master, I'll let his disciple take advantage of him. Lu Cheng was stunned for a few seconds. Half surprised and half confused, he said, judging from my master's appearance, he seems to be very interested in the restriction sect divine arts. He can actually resist the temptation? And from what he said to me, he doesn't seem to have any old-fashioned sect ideology. Master doesn't seem very reliable usually. Who would have thought that he's the kind of elder who knows what to do and what not to do? Ah. Geezer Sher, who was far away in Moshang, sneezed and muttered, "Who's scolding me?" Ning Zitong heard Lu Cheng's words and shook her head with a smile. That was before he was seriously injured. After his injury, he's gotten over many things. Besides, in the words of you youngsters, he's just a mouth cannon. Lu Cheng didn't know how to respond to his master's teasing, so he could only reply with a smile. All right, get ready. You'll go to the capital in 2 days to comprehend, Ning Zitong explained with a smile. The item isn't with us. Elder May is looking after it. At this point, she sighed and said, I hope you can gain something. We might not be counting on the Dragon King for the opening match of this year's professional tournament. Is the Dragon King injured? Lu Cheng guessed. During the Spring Festival, the Dragon King had accepted the Warrior Sage's challenge for the Grandmaster title. After 3 tough battles, he had lost. At that time, Lu Cheng had thought that he might have fought too hard and gotten injured. A little, but it's not serious. But it's going to be the finals of the Supreme Class battle soon. Given the Dragon King's ambition, he definitely won't give up. When the time comes, his injuries will most likely worsen. Seriously, the finals of the Grandmaster and Supreme Class battle are arranged too close together. Ning Zitong grumbled. Yeah. Lu Cheng nodded slowly. Then, he asked, Sister Ning, are the matchups for the professional tournament out yet? Who are we up against? It's out, but it hasn't been announced yet. Ning Zitong rubbed her forehead and said, in 2 weeks, as the defending champion of the world #1, we will accept the challenge from the Guanwai League on our home ground. God-slaying saber Lu Yongyuan. That was the first name that came to Lu Cheng's mind when he heard the Guanwai League. Without the Dragon King, the club would probably be at a disadvantage. Seeing that Lu Cheng was silent, Ning Zitong chuckled. Don't be too nervous. Lu Yongyuan is from the same generation as me. I don't think I'll lose to him. As for the others, do you know? They have a new physical invulnerability expert. Who is it? I haven't heard of anyone advancing recently. Lu Cheng was confused. Not from China. She's from Japan. You know her, Kori Karasawa, Ning Zitong said with a smile. You can invite a foreign mighty one? Lu Cheng asked in surprise. I met her in Huaqing because of this. I thought she was going to fulfill her promise and challenge the priest. I even reminded that unreliable guy not to miss out on the peach blossom just because he was in a daze. There's no rule against it. It's just that as a special guest, Kori Karasawa can't practice the martial arts of the Guanwai League. She can only fight with money. Yeah, I heard that her idea is to improve more through actual combat, explained Ning Zitong. Then, she smiled sweetly and continued, this news has stirred up the media. There will be reports in a few days. I already know quite a few headlines, such as Japan's strongest genius admires Chinese culture and beaten into submission, here to learn. I can imagine the reaction from Japan. Kori Karasawa must be under a lot of pressure. Lu Cheng's doubts were gone. Leaning back, he smiled and said, it's not bad to have a rematch with her. Chapter 690. 2 days later, in the still chilly capital. When Lu Qing stepped into the courtyard house again, Elder May was tending to the flowers and plants leisurely and contented. He had changed into a black short robe, looking neither ancient nor modern. His silver hair was much thinner, and the loneliness in his eyes was more apparent. "Greetings, Elder May." Lu Qing bowed respectfully. Old May raised his head. His eyebrows, which were about to pop out of his face, twitched twice. "The second room on the left." "Thank you, Elder." Lu Qing didn't waste time. He strode towards the left side of the courtyard. Elder May lowered his head and focused on the flowers again, as though nothing else mattered to him. Lu Qing stepped onto the stairs and stopped in front of his destination. He stared at the windowless room for a few seconds before pushing open the door with a mottled bronze lock. The door creaked for a long time, and the scene inside slowly appeared before his eyes. The floor was paved with green bricks, and there was nothing on it. The spacious and cold feeling was obvious. It was as though even in summer, this place would still feel like late autumn. Lu Qing didn't look around. Instead, his gaze was attracted by a painting hanging on the opposite wall. It was dark all around, unaffected by external light. He could only vaguely make out a Taoist in the middle of the painting. It was a Taoist who bore some resemblance to the heavenly primogenitor statue in the Taoist temple. Even with Lu Qing's current realm and strength, he couldn't see it clearly. Instinctively, he took a few steps forward into the room and got closer. Light gathered in his eyes, as though a huge sun had taken shape. It shone in front of him, trying to pierce through the darkness. At this moment, his vision blurred. The surrounding was covered in boundless darkness. In the distance, bright spots, pure white and dazzling, moved slowly along a mysterious path. The universe of stars. Why did it appear naturally? Just as this thought flashed through Lu Qing's mind, he suddenly saw a jade-white palm pressing down on him. Its 5 fingers clenched, and the center of its palm was dark and deep. The starry sky and the universe became smaller and smaller, more and more solidified. Crack! The stars were destroyed one by one, and the darkness rapidly shrank to a single point. Shortly after, it spurted out and split into pieces. Thump thump thump. Lu Qing took a few steps back until he was outside the room. Blood seeped out of his eyes, ears, mouth, and nose. He was clearly dispirited, and his head was unusually painful. In just a few breaths' time, he felt like he had fought a tough battle with the Dragon King and the Warrior Sage. This is the Forbidden Sex Clear Jade chapter? What kind of realm did the senior who created this divine technique reach? Is it something that can only be encountered but not sought? Amidst his thoughts, Lu Qing sat down cross-legged and regulated his breathing. Then, he visualized the wholeness and confrontation formula in an orderly manner before entering a deep sleep. An hour later, he opened his eyes. His spirit had recovered. Exerting strength in his back, he stood up and stepped into the room again. He looked at the picture scroll shrouded in darkness. The scene was the same as before, but it lasted a few seconds longer than before. 2 times, 3 times. When he endured the pain from his deep sleep and wanted to continue comprehending, he saw old May, who was wearing a short black robe, standing at the door. Go back, ponder and comprehend more. Before stepping into the forbidden domain, every martial artist will see different scenes due to their own foundation and knowledge. Even the same martial artist will have slight differences in their comprehension after a period of time. Old May said calmly, as long as you complete a mission every year, you can come here to comprehend once. Hee, don't bite off more than you can chew. Digest what you've learned before. Yes, Senior May. Lu Qing suppressed the melancholy in his heart. He turned and walked towards the door of the courtyard. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly turned back and asked, Senior May, can I share my comprehension of the forbidden sex divine techniques with others? If the other martial artists don't mind. Old May smiled faintly. A few days later, the finals of the Supreme Class battle began. The defending champion, warrior sage, Qian Donglu, the challenger, Dragon King, Chen Qitao, the clown, Gu Jinshi, and the wisdom king, Zhi Hai. It was a single round-robin competition. If the three of them had the same results and formed a closed loop, there would be additional matches. Lu Qing and Empress Luo's worries came true in the first match. Due to the drawing of lots, the Dragon King faced the warrior sage head-on. This time, he won, but he was heavily injured. After that, the Wisdom King, Zhi Hai, took advantage of the internecine battle between the legendary twins. He won all 3 matches and became the Supreme Class Mighty One of this year, obtaining his second individual title. He was far ahead of his peers like Lu Qing, Ping Liyun, and Ren Li. Not long after the Supreme Class battle ended, the flames of war reignited in the top professional matches. A new season was about to begin. The previous world number 1, Longhu Club, was in charge of this. They would be stationed at M Crimson and watching to welcome the challenge from the Guanwai League. On Friday afternoon, the sky was gloomy and the humidity was heavy. A luxurious minibus drove out of the airport towards Guyue Hotel. On the bus sat the physical invulnerability experts of the Guanwai League and their assistants. Kori Karasawa wasn't wearing her kimono anymore. Instead, she had changed into the Guanwai League's away martial arts uniform with a white base and red embellishments. The Fukujimura was hidden in its scabbard across her knees. From the corner of her eye, she observed Lu Yongyuan, who was sitting by the window opposite her. His hair was neatly combed back, and he was calmly admiring the scenery outside. The world-renowned god-slaying saber was standing calmly beside him, leaning against the seat. Its dark green scabbard shone faintly. Kori Karasawa didn't retract her gaze. Instead, she adjusted her sitting posture as though she was imitating him. Just like when she first entered the Shinjai sect and was accepted as a disciple by her master. In those few years, she, who was still very short, had always imitated her master's every move, be it in terms of martial arts or daily habits. Through this, she cultivated her bearing and adjusted her mind. Only when she had mastered kendo did she slowly develop her own style. Master once said that every mighty one starts by imitating their seniors. Now, I'll treat it as me starting anew. I'll start by imitating Senior Lu. He was a grand master of saber techniques, and had certain similarities with Japanese kendo. Her master had once visited him in his prime and sparred with him in kendo. He was sincerely convinced by Lu Yongyuan and believed that the current him was even better than before. It was because of this relationship that she was able to bypass the obstacles and enter the Guanwai League. A mighty one of saber techniques, who could make her master revere him every time he mentioned him, was indeed someone worth imitating. Kori Karasawa felt that she had once again found the passion she had when she first started practicing kendo. The biggest obstacle now is language. At this moment, the sky darkened even more. The pitter-patter of rain suddenly fell, blurring the car windows. Spring rain. Kori Karasawa thought in a daze. Suddenly, she heard Lu Yongyuan mumbling to himself in a low voice, "It's raining." Outside the window, the rain was getting heavier. The dark green scabbard beside Lu Yongyuan let out a continuous and long groan. It was as though the dullness had disappeared and was replaced by joy. It was as though a real dragon had finally broken free from its shackles and was soaring in the sky, summoning clouds and rain. Clang! The hum of the saber reverberated. Kori Karasawa seemed to have been touched by something, but couldn't think clearly. It's raining. Ning Zitong sighed as she looked out of the window in the Longhu Club conference room. It's not like you haven't seen rain before, Coach Yen replied impatiently. He then looked at Lu Qing and Guijia. Let's continue talking about the Guanwai League. Okay. Having lived in Huaqing for so long, Lu Qing was used to rain, even if it was the first rain of spring. Guijie didn't even look sideways. Her eyes were glued to the projection screen, even if the chances of her fighting were slim. As for the Dragon King, he was receiving comprehensive treatment in the hospital and would only be able to fight again in another 10 days. Lu Yan nodded and said bluntly, "The Guanwei League isn't strong." Other than Lu Yongyuan, there are quite a few physical invulnerability experts, but none of them can reach first pin. Lu Yongyuan is the last to speak. Since he created his own saber technique, his strength has been increasing day by day. Now that he's qualified to fight for a title, we have to take him seriously. Other than him, the Guanwei League has 2 second pin experts, 1 third pin, and a new member, Kori Karasawa, who hasn't reported to the association yet. The 2 second pin experts are Golden Fur Ho, Li Pingao, and Mirage Dragon, Zhu Xiaoyun. At the mention of Golden Fur Ho, Ning Zidong glanced at Lu Qing and burst out laughing, ruining the solemn atmosphere that Lu Yan had deliberately created. "Actually, I feel that nicknames like God of Misfortune and God of Calamity are much better than Ho Lai Lai Lai," she said. "I wanted to change my nickname too, but no one listened." Lu Qing said helplessly. That Mirage Dragon, Zhu Xiaoyun, was famous for her illusions. She should be the physical invulnerability expert currently teaching Sister Jingjing. Thump, thump, thump. Lu Yan knocked on the table a few times and continued. The Guanwei League had high hopes for Li Pingao, believing that he would reach first pin very quickly. After a few years of accumulation, he might even have the chance to fight for a title. However, his growth wasn't as expected. Some said that shortly after his promotion, he encountered the Dragon King and lost his confidence. Some said that his father, whom he had always depended on, passed away the year he reached physical invulnerability. This left him devastated. Chapter 691. Lu Qing had never expressed his opinion on people he didn't know well enough. He listened quietly as Coach Lu Yan continued. Li Pingao has the supernatural ability to metallize his body. Guanwei League also has a similar physical invulnerability martial arts. Hence, he chose this path instead of the dark sect. His speed, strength, agility, endurance, and recovery are all outstanding. His style is bold and aggressive. The nickname Golden Ho isn't just for show. Why do I feel like you're scolding me? Lu Qing covered half of his face. Ever since he reached physical invulnerability, Li Pingao has disappointed the older generation of Guanwei League experts time and time again. He's become quieter and quieter, Ning Zidong added. This reminds me of a saying, if you don't explode in silence, you die in silence. You can't underestimate him. At this point, she sighed. When the top professional competition was first established, Guanwei League was one of the top 3 powers. Every physical invulnerability expert of the older generation was a force to be reckoned with. It's a pity that after a few decades, the old are old, the young are young, and the useless are useless. Other than Lu Yongyuan, they don't have anyone else. They're always at the bottom of the rankings and might be demoted if they're not careful. To the top powers, even a physical invulnerability expert like Li Pingao is considered useless. Indeed, it's all about comparison. Lu Qing was speechless. He was glad that he had a clear goal and a firm path. Lu Yan looked at Ning Zidong, who interrupted him. He coughed and said, Guanwei League's other second-pin fighter, Zhu Xiaoyun, is gifted with the power of illusion. She once defeated an inhuman with her powerful supernatural ability when she was at the 6th pin stage. However, it took her a full 5 years to master it and incorporate the outstanding bloodline ability into her martial arts. She barely made the great leap at the age of 28 and reached physical invulnerability. She has great potential. She's not even 30 this year and is already a second pin. However, it'll be difficult for her to reach the next level. The unique skills of the illusion sect have been missing for a long time. Guanhui League only has a small portion of it. Although the dark sect has similar content, it's only one aspect. Zhu Xiaoyun will either be stuck at her current level or like Lu Yongyuan, she'll be able to integrate all her knowledge, bloodline power, and insights to find her own path and create her own martial arts. If that's the case, her future will be limitless and she's qualified to fight for titles. After introducing Zhu Xiaoyun's general situation, Lu Yan didn't even have the time to catch his breath. I think she's Lu Yongyuan is. She sees Lu Yongyuan. And Lu Yongyuan. I think. She. Hearing Ning Zidong mention Zhu Xiaoyun's hobbies, Lu Yan's face darkened. He looked at Lu Cheng and said in a deep voice, her illusions have already reached the level of passing off falsehood as reality, which is a perfect counter to enemy heart-freezing move. However, you still have the ability to predict danger. If you encounter her, your chances of winning are very high. Yeah. Lu Cheng nodded solemnly, but in his heart, he was wondering with great interest what kind of dark history Zhu Xiaoyun had in her hands. Seeing Lu Cheng's good attitude, Lu Yan nodded in satisfaction. The two of them, together with Lu Yongyuan, were the main force of Guanhui League last year. Third Pin Jingshi duo was the substitute. If two or more of them were injured, the older generation mighty ones would step in. Otherwise, they would pick one of the disciples close to the physical invulnerability stage to experience actual combat. However, they've added Kori Karasawa from Japan this year. I don't think there will be such a situation. Jingshi duo, 29 years old. He's been a physical invulnerability expert for more than 2 years. He's 1.96 meters tall, but he's still growing. He specializes in the unique skills of the dark sect and often acts impulsively. If nothing goes wrong, he'll be the substitute tomorrow. Kori Karasawa has just made the great leap a few months ago. There's no record of her fighting at this stage. Her exact strength and standard are unknown. She might be a surprise fighter. After analyzing them one by one, Lu Yan's expression turned solemn. Empress Luo's style gives her an obvious advantage against weaker opponents. We can't let her face Lu Yongyuan directly. Lu Cheng, you'll be the first to fight. Regardless of whether it's Li Pingao, Zhu Xiaoyun, or Kori Karasawa, you have to win. This is a small request. You can do it, right? Then, try your best to exhaust the second martial artist. If Lu Yongyuan is the vanguard, things will be much simpler. Guijia, you'll be the second to fight. Before Lu Yan could finish, martial arts fanatic Guijia blurted out, me? Shouldn't the opening battle be a safe one? As the coach of a first pin expert, our chances of winning will be higher if you fight. Not confident. You don't want to fight. Lu Yan didn't answer her question. Instead, he asked her a question with a serious expression. Yes. Guijia did not hesitate and answered resolutely. Her face was filled with excitement. Great. No matter who you're up against, you'll be a battle-hardened fighter. You only have one goal, victory. Lu Yan turned to Ning Zidong. After Guijia exhausts the third martial artist of the Guanhui League, you'll finish the rest. At that time, it shouldn't be a problem for Lu Yongyuan or anyone else. Ning Zidong replied with a calm smile. She continued to talk about the most likely arrangement of the Guanhui League. After Lu Cheng and Guijia left, she frowned and looked at Lu Yan. Why did you suddenly let her fight? She's at the standard of a second pin. She's no longer a fledgling, said Lu Yan. It's time to give her some pressure. What pressure can there be if you only let her fight in a match that she's sure to win or in an individual arena that concerns herself? Only in such an important situation where she might lose can you truly baptize her. Or are you willing to let her learn from the Dragon King and risk her life in a war-torn zone as a physical invulnerability expert? We're not young anymore. We have to focus on the future and give them a chance to step up. Ning Zidong listened in silence. After a long while, she puffed her cheeks like a little girl and sighed. You'll always be more rational than me. The next morning, the blue sky was clear and tranquil. The spring breeze brought some warmth that made one feel exceptionally comfortable. Lu Yongyuan practiced the most basic moves like splitting, slicing, parrying, chopping, and vibrating dozens of times. He was as focused and devoted as when he first started learning the saber. If a mighty one were to pass by, they would be shocked to find that the most basic moves were flawless in Lu Yongyuan's hands. They could even be called perfect. Moreover, every time the same move was performed, there wasn't the slightest difference. Be it the angle or the traces, it was as though he had copied them. When Lu Yongyuan displayed his saber moves, the layers of light expanded like a rolling snowball, giving off a different vibe. It was the same move, the same scene, and the same saber strike, but there were subtle differences. It was as though the moves were changing according to the time and circumstances, but they were never repeated. Without permission, Kori Karasawa didn't dare to observe the tempering of the god-slaying saber. However, when she practiced her swordsmanship, she felt that there was a hidden charm around her that was long and profound. As there was a competition today, the physical invulnerability experts of the Guanwai League didn't train for too long. They were mainly adjusting and resting. After lunch, they boarded a luxurious minibus and headed to the outskirts of Mchixia. Along the way, Lu Yongyuan closed his eyes and leaned back as though he was taking a nap. When they were about to arrive, he suddenly opened his eyes and said to Kori Karasawa, "You have a solid foundation and have mastered the swordsmanship of the Shinjai sect. Moreover, outsiders don't know about it. This is the perfect opportunity to give Longhu a surprise." After the translator conveyed the message, Kori Karasawa's eyes widened. "Senior, you want me to fight?" At this moment, Li Pingao, Zhu Xiaoyun, and Jing Shiduo all looked over. "Yes, catch them by surprise," Lu Yongyuan replied calmly. "You will start the game." Okay. Kori Karasawa was stunned for a moment before replying with vigor. Lu Yongyuan didn't say anything else. He looked ahead and said, "I'll be the second. I'll bridge the gap and break through the obstacles. If I can meet Empress Luo in my peak condition, it'll be good. If I can't, she won't be able to hold on. Xiaoyun, use your illusions to deal with her. You will have a chance." "Yes." Zhu Xiaoyun's voice was deep and masculine. She was of average height, with wheat-colored skin. Her facial features were elegant, and her eyes were beautiful. Jing Shiduo didn't have any objections to this arrangement. Li Pingao, whose skin had a slight metallic luster, was even more silent. The car circled around the mountain road and finally arrived at the parking lot. Following the passageway, Kori Karasawa and the rest felt the dry and scorching air. They saw the crimson arena in the middle of the road that was protruding from the depressions. Longhu Club, Fiery Hell. The audience was gradually arriving and entering the glass rooms and corridors at the edge. This is the battle between the top forces of China. Kori Karasawa took a deep breath and smelled the burning smell. Her grip on the fugu ball tightened subconsciously. Chapter 692. On the other side of Fiery Hell, far away from the scorching heat of the home team's changing room, Guojia, the martial arts fanatic, sat cross-legged with her palms facing the sky. She maintained a steady rhythm of breathing, long and distant. She didn't care about anything outside of her body. "She's a little nervous." Ning Zidong sighed and sent a message to Lu Yen. Lu Yen kept a straight face as he nodded his head ever so slightly and said, "That's a normal reaction." As he spoke, he couldn't help but look at Lu Qing, who was typing on his phone. As expected of a guy with a few physical and vulnerability experts under his belt. "He's so calm and collected like us old foxes." Lu Qing ignored the coach's gaze and sent a message to his wife with a smile. "What should I do? The little newbie of the top class is trembling." It was the weekend, and Yenjika, who had mastered the wholeness formula, decided to indulge herself and stay up late to watch the opening match. "That's not what you said when you challenged the warrior sage." Looking up at the sky expression, mercilessly exposed his pretense. Lu Qing replied, covering face expression. "I was too excited back then, what about now?" Rolling eyes expression, Yenjika replied. "I'm considering many things now. For example, if I were to meet Lu Yongyuan in the opening match, what would I be able to do this time? For example, if fiery hell weakened my ice sect's secret arts, it wouldn't be a home ground advantage." Lu Qing replied seriously. "For example, how to flirt with my little fairy." "Pfft. You're quite carefree. You've even learned how to tease me." Bristling with anger expression, Yenjika burst out laughing. Lu Qing chuckled. This is one of the effective ways to control nervousness. And after so many life and death battles, he was quite confident. After chatting for a while, Yenjika changed the topic. "Your fan forum has been super lively these few days, why?" Lu Qing was puzzled. Because he was going to be the main player in the Longhu Club's new year. During this period of time, other than chatting with his wife and occasionally calling home, he was in a semi-secluded state. He was racing against time to digest what he had learned from the restriction sect. Clear Jade chapter. He hadn't been on Weibo or forums for more than a week. Yenjika sent a cat emoji that was observing in the dark. "Isn't little Wonton studying and watching? She bought tickets to today's competition and wants to cheer for you on the spot." Shaoling, Brahman, Nye Chi, and Unparalleled Dragon King have all asked her to cheer for you. Lu Qing suddenly realized something. "I forgot that little Wonton is studying here," Yenjika praised him in her heart. "Cover your mouth and laugh expression. Do you want to design a special celebration for them?" As a mighty one with physical invulnerability, keeping a low profile and paying attention to your image is the way to go, replied Lu Qing jokingly. "I don't want to talk to you anymore, Uncle Cheng." Yenjika replied with an emoji of indifference. Lu Qing took the opportunity to tease him. Lu Yen couldn't take it anymore. He walked over and said after some deliberation, "Don't worry. It's going to start in about 10 minutes. You're the first one, so it's best to adjust your condition. I planned to do it when there were only 10 minutes left." Lu Qing gave a hollow laugh and said, "All right." After answering, he immediately lowered his head and complained tearfully to his wife. "I was despised by the coach. I have to focus on preparing for the competition." "Ha, I'll seriously despise you for 5 minutes too," replied Yenjika without any sympathy. Keeping his phone, Lu Qing stood up leisurely. First, he moved his neck left and right. Then, he slowly executed a set of moves. His movements were relaxed and his rhythm was sluggish, like an old man doing morning exercises. However, each of his punches and kicks were full of charm, giving people a continuous and natural feeling of transcendence. After completing a set of moves, Lu Cheng's thoughts settled and his ice heart formed. The qi and blood in his body were like a melting river, flowing gradually and converging into a flood. This kid is a little different after comprehending the Clear Jade chapter. Ning Zitong watched thoughtfully. She sent a telepathic message to Lu Yen and sighed. Lu Yen replied without a change in his expression, "Wasn't it the same when we comprehended it back then?" At this moment, the cheers outside grew louder. The curtains of the new top-class professional competition were about to be lifted. After a while, Lu Yan looked at Guijia, who had opened her eyes, and Lu Qing, who had finished adjusting his condition. With his hands behind his back, he walked out of the changing room. Let's go. Unlike usual, this was the opening match. There was a short ceremony between the two fighters. Lu Qing flicked his navy blue martial arts suit and followed behind Lu Yan to the arena. The ground beneath his feet was erupting with fire. The cheers of Longhu shook the mountain. Looking around, he saw the petite little wonton. Wearing a pair of orange-rimmed glasses, she was still in the prime of her youth. When she saw Lu Qing coming, she waved her hands excitedly, completely forgetting the advice of her channel mates. When Lu Qing nodded and looked away, little wonton finally remembered the main point. She quickly took out a short navy blue banner from her backpack. Pulling it apart with both hands, she raised it above her head. There was no name on it, only a few big words. "We'll be here if you're here." Glancing at it from the corner of his eye, Lu Qing suddenly remembered the support from last year. When he was at his lowest point, they still stood by him. His heart was instantly filled with warmth. In front of the computer screen, Yan Shaoling covered her face and sighed. She replied in the live thread. "We shouldn't have let little wonton do this. She's too short and not eye-catching enough. Half of it is blocked." Unparalleled Dragon King immediately replied with a funny face. "No matter how short she is, she's still a few centimeters taller than you. Who gave you the confidence to say that?" "Inner height." Yan Shaoling habitually made fun of herself. After the simple ceremony, Lu Yan, Lu Yongyuan, and the rest retreated to their respective changing rooms, leaving only Lu Qing and Kori Karasawa in the middle of the arena. "Please enlighten me, Lu Kuan." Kori Karasawa bowed politely. She was very unfamiliar with Hua Nation. After knowing that her opponent was Lu Qing, she asked the translator to give her the pronunciation of these 5 words. Then, she memorized them and repeated them mechanically. Lu Qing cupped his hands and replied with a smile, "I've been looking forward to a rematch with you." Kori Karasawa didn't understand. Her eyes widened in confusion. Both parties pulled apart and retreated to their designated spots. At this moment, on Japan's largest otaku forum, there were many discussion threads. There were many replies, and it was even more popular than other news. "Kori-chan looks cute in this. Why did she abandon us and go to China?" "For kendo. Kori-chan is the most charming when she's serious." "Who's her opponent?" "He looks familiar. I remember now. He lost to Kori-chan in the previous King of Youth Pro League. He has also entered the realm of gods and devils." Unbelievable. Apart from the true martial arts fanatics, most Japanese only knew about the mighty ones in their own country. They weren't interested or free to know who had reached the physical invulnerability stage in another country. This was the norm in all countries. In the eyes of those who paid attention to this matter, every physical invulnerability mighty one was famous. However, if you were to ask an ordinary person from another country, they would only reply with a puzzled expression, "Who is he?" Seeing that most people didn't know much about Lu Qing, an enthusiast stepped forward to explain. "Don't underestimate him. Back then, he overtook the champion of the King of Youth Pro League by half a step. He was weak before because he started training late and didn't have the time to become stronger. This is a true mighty one, from the heart to the body. If Kori-chan doesn't improve beyond expectations, the chances of her losing this match are higher." After reading the explanation, many people replied, "He doesn't look like one. Idiot. It's because of the TV broadcast. It can't show that kind of temperament. I want Kori-chan to win, but I also want to see her teary face. What a contradiction. Pervert." The atmosphere of the forum quickly turned cheerful. Even with the reminder, they still lacked a direct understanding of Lu Cheng's strength. For the two with communication barriers, the 3-minute conversation turned into a pure battle of aura. Kori Karasawa was calm as she stood amidst the gushing flames. It was as though she was in an ancient meditation hall in the depths of the Hinze-ryu dojo. The floor beneath her feet was smooth and old, the trees outside the window were overgrown, and the moonlight was cold. There was no one around except for the Buddha statue. The solemn Buddha statue stood tall, overlooking the tranquility of the mortal world. She sat cross-legged and looked at it with her eyes closed. Her body and mind were empty. Without any obstacles or barriers, everything around her jumped into Kori Karasawa's mind. An indescribable and invisible feeling surfaced. Eye of the mind. This was one of the fundamentals of the Shinze-ryu Kendo. It was similar to the combination of enemy heart freezing move and prediction ability. However, both aspects were lacking. Kori Karasawa saw the magma waiting to erupt underground, saw Lu Cheng, and saw a crystal-clear soul that was like a mirror on all sides. She saw her own reflection in the mirror. Every detail was exposed and exceptionally clear. Her mind jolted and she almost left the eye of the mind state. Calming herself down, Kori Karasawa maintained her state. She calmly opened her eyes and made eye contact with Lu Cheng. Her back arched naturally and her right hand gripped the hilt of her fukajemaru. She was like a divine weapon with a hidden edge, waiting for the day when she would shine brightly. After some time, the referee, who had retreated to the edge, raised his right hand and shouted, "Begin." The curtains of the new top-tier professional tournament had officially begun. Kori Karasawa suddenly stepped forward. Her body rippled like water and appeared before Lu Cheng in a flash. Clang! A bright white light shone, so fast that no one could see its trajectory. Ground shrink. Unsheath. To Kori Karasawa, the combination of these two ultimate moves was as easy as breathing or eating. She was fast, and so was Lu Cheng. As Kori Karasawa ground shrink, Lu Cheng stepped forward and closed the distance between them. His right fist hammered down heavily, hitting the side of the katana to stop its edge from slicing through the air. If not for Kori Karasawa's shocking speed of ground shrink, he could have pressed down on her palm and pushed the katana back into its scabbard. Kori Karasawa didn't panic. Instead, it was as if she had returned to the meditation hall and saw the Buddha statue. Clang! The empty scabbard in her left hand pierced out towards Lu Cheng's lower abdomen. It was comparable to unsheath. This was a sure kill move. Shinze-ryu takedown, double dragon takedown. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.